The fluorescent lights of Elite Martial Arts Academy cast harsh shadows as two black belt CEOs circled a janitor like predators stalking prey. "Come on, mop boy." Ava Hale sneered, her designer G pristine against his worn work clothes. "Show us what you've got." Ray Walker's calloused hands tightened on his mop handle as 30 students pulled out their phones, hungry for humiliation. But when his 8-year-old daughter Emma whispered from the corner, "Daddy, please don't let them laugh at you anymore," something ancient stirred in the former Marine's chest, something the world hadn't seen since Afghanistan when they called him the Steel Ghost. Want to know what happened when a decorated war hero finally had enough? Stay with me till the end and drop a comment about which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this incredible story travels. The January wind rattled the windows of Elite Martial Arts Academy in downtown Seattle, carrying with it the promise of rain that would wash the city clean by morning. Inside the dojo, the warmth from the heating system mixed with the sweat of evening training, creating a humid atmosphere that clung to everything like an unwelcome second skin. Ray Walker pushed his industrial mop across the hardwood floors in steady, methodical strokes, the same way he'd done every weeknight for the past 2 years. The chemical smell of pine cleaner had long since stopped bothering him. It was just another part of the routine that kept food on the table and a roof over his daughter's head. At 42, Ray had the kind of build that suggested strength without shouting about it. His shoulders were broad but slightly hunched, as if he'd spent years carrying invisible weight. His dark hair, peppered with premature gray, was always neatly trimmed, a habit from his military days that he couldn't shake. His hands, scarred and calloused, moved the mop with the same precision he'd once used to field strip an M4 carbine in complete darkness. But here in this gleaming dojo with its wall of trophies and photographs of smiling students, he was invisible. Just the janitor, the help, the man who cleaned up after everyone else's dreams. "Daddy, I finished my homework." Emma's small voice carried across the dojo from where she sat in the corner, her second-hand backpack serving as a makeshift desk. At 8 years old, Emma Walker had her mother's delicate features, the same heart-shaped face, the same honey-brown eyes that seemed to see right through people's pretenses. She'd inherited Ray's determination, though that quiet steel that kept her studying even when other kids would have given up. "That's my girl," Ray called back, never breaking his rhythm with the mop. "Check it twice, remember, accuracy matters more than speed." Emma nodded solemnly, bending back over her math worksheet. She'd learned to do her homework here while waiting for her father to finish his shift. The after-school program at her elementary school had been cut due to budget constraints, and Ray couldn't afford a babysitter. So every evening she sat in that corner trying to make herself small, trying not to be noticed by the students who came here to train. The main door burst open with unnecessary force, admitting a gust of cold air and the unmistakable presence of Ava and Sierra Hale. The 28-year-old identical twins moved through the world like they owned it, which in many ways they did. Their tech company, Hale Systems, had revolutionized cloud computing security, making them millionaires before their 25th birthday. They'd been featured on the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Wired, always photographed in matching power suits, their platinum blonde hair styled to perfection, their smiles sharp enough to cut glass. But here in the dojo, they wore matching black GIs, their black belts tied with practiced precision. They'd been training here for 5 years, their natural athleticism and competitive drive making them formidable fighters. They were the dojo's star students, their photographs prominently displayed on the wall of excellence near the entrance. "God, it reeks of pine cleaner in here," Ava announced, her voice carrying that particular tone of disgust reserved for those who believed the world existed solely to inconvenience them. She was technically the older twin by 3 minutes, something she never let Sierra forget. "Hey, janitor guy, maybe ease up on the chemicals? Some of us need to breathe while we train." Ray didn't look up, didn't acknowledge the comment. He'd learned early on that engaging with the Hale sisters only prolonged the interaction. Better to be furniture, to be background noise, to be nothing. Sierra laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "I don't think he speaks English, Ava. Remember last month when I asked him to clean the women's changing room and he just stared at me?" She moved closer to Ray, her designer perfume, something French and expensive cutting through the pine scent. "Hello? Anyone home?" I cleaned the changing room after closing, ma'am, Ray said quietly, still not looking up. Didn't think it was appropriate to enter while it was in use. Oh, he does speak. Sierra clapped her hands in mock delight. And with such perfect grammar, too. Where did you learn that janitor school? The other students were beginning to arrive for the advanced class, mostly young professionals, who treated martial arts like another networking opportunity. They gathered in small groups, warming up while sneaking glances at the interaction between the twins and the janitor. Everyone knew how the Hale sisters were, but no one ever said anything. Their families' donations kept the dojo's lights on. Their presence attracted other wealthy students. They were untouchable. Master Chen emerged from his office, his weathered face creasing into a smile when he saw the twins. At 63, Chen had run the dojo for 15 years, building it from a small studio into one of Seattle's premier martial arts academies. He commanded respect, but even he tread carefully around his most valuable students. Ava, Sierra, wonderful to see you both, he said, his slight accent coloring the words. Ready for tonight's sparring session. Always, Ava said, finally turning away from Ray. Though I hope you found us better partners than last week. That brown belt barely lasted 30 seconds. Well, Master Chen said diplomatically, improvement comes from challenging ourselves against all skill levels. Sierra snorted. Please, we need real competition. Someone who can actually push us. Her gaze drifted back to Ray, who had moved to the far side of the dojo, working around the heavy bags. Unlike some people who just push mops around. The comment was loud enough for everyone to hear. A few students chuckled nervously. Others looked away uncomfortable, but unwilling to intervene. Emma in her corner had gone very still, her pencil frozen above her worksheet. Ray's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his movements remained steady. In his mind, he heard his staff sergeant's voice from 20 years ago. Discipline isn't about never getting angry, Walker. It's about choosing when that anger serves a purpose. Here now, anger served no purpose. It would only cost him his job, and Emma needed stability more than he needed dignity. The class began with warm-ups, the students moving through kata with varying degrees of precision. The Hale sisters, Ray had to admit, were technically proficient. Their movements were sharp, controlled, powerful. But there was something missing. The humility that true martial arts demanded, the understanding that strength without wisdom was just violence dressed in ceremony. As Ray worked, he found himself unconsciously critiquing their form. Ava telegraphed her kicks, dropping her shoulder a fraction of a second before she moved. Sierra's stance was too wide, sacrificing mobility for the appearance of stability. Small things, but in a real fight, those small things mattered. Pair up for sparring drills, White, Master Chen announced. The students began partnering off, but as always, the twins stood apart, waiting for Chen to assign them opponents. It was another power play, making others come to them, never the other way around. Master Chen, Ava called out, her voice syrupy sweet. Since we need a real challenge, why don't we try something different tonight? Chen approached cautiously. What did you have in mind? 2-on-1, Sierra said, smiling. Us against your best student. Unless you don't think anyone here can handle both of us. The dojo fell silent. It was a challenge and an insult wrapped in a request. Chen's face flushed slightly. That's not traditional training and… Come on, Ava interrupted. We're black belts. We should be pushed beyond traditional, shouldn't we? Or is this dojo only about going through the motions? Ray watched from the periphery as Chen struggled with the situation. The master's best student, Marcus, was warming up near the mirrors. A second-degree black belt, Marcus was skilled but nowhere near ready to face both twins simultaneously. It would be a slaughter, and everyone knew it. I'll assign partners as I see fit, Chen said finally, his tone brooking no argument. Ava, you're with Marcus. Sierra, you'll work with David. The twins exchanged a look of pure disdain but moved to their assigned areas. The sparring began, and within minutes, both Marcus and David were on the defensive, barely managing to block the sisters' aggressive attacks. The twins didn't just want to win, they wanted to humiliate. Ray had seen this before in Afghanistan. Young soldiers drunk on their own power, confusing fear for respect, mistaking cruelty for strength. He'd seen where that road led to breakdown, to failure, to losses that could never be recovered. Daddy? Emma had appeared at his side, her math homework clutched in her small hands. They're not very nice, are they? Ray knelt down to her level, his voice gentle. Some people forget that being strong means protecting others, not hurting them. But they're winning, Emma said, watching as Marcus took a particularly hard hit to the ribs. There's different kinds of winning, baby girl. The kind that matters happens in here. He tapped his chest over his heart. Not out there. Emma nodded, but Ray could see the doubt in her eyes. She was 8 years old watching her father clean floors while people who treated him like dirt succeeded at everything they touched. What lesson was she really learning? The sparring session ended with both Marcus and David nursing bruises and wounded pride. The twins high-fived each other, their laughter echoing off the walls. Master Chen called for a water break, and the students dispersed to the edges of the dojo. God, that was pathetic, Sierra said loudly, pulling off her sparring gloves. Is this really the best this place has to offer? Maybe we should find a real dojo, Ava added, taking a long drink from her designer water bottle. Somewhere with actual fighters, not just weekend warriors playing dress-up. The insult hung in the air like a challenge. Several students bristled, but no one spoke up. Ray continued mopping, moving closer to where the twins stood. He needed to clean that section before the class resumed. Watch it, janitor, Ava snapped as he approached. Can't you see we're standing here? I apologize, ma'am. I'll work around you, Ray said evenly. You'll work when we're done, Sierra said, stepping deliberately onto the area Ray had just cleaned, leaving dirty footprints on the wet floor. Or better yet, why don't you just wait until the real people are finished? Ray straightened slowly, his grip on the mop handle tightening until his knuckles went white. In his peripheral vision, he saw Emma saw the hurt in her eyes at how these women were treating her father. Something deep inside him, something he'd kept carefully locked away since returning from his last deployment, began to crack. Is there a problem here? Master Chen had approached, sensing the tension. No problem, Ava said dismissively. Just explaining to the help about proper timing. Ray works hard to keep this dojo clean, Chen said carefully. We should all respect that. Sierra laughed. Respect for mopping floors. Please. Respect is earned through achievement, through strength, through success. Not through... She gestured vaguely at Ray. Whatever this is. You want to talk about strength. The words were out before Ray could stop them, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made everyone turn. You think strength is about beating people who can't really fight back, about making yourself feel big by making others feel small. The dojo went completely silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hold their breath. Ava and Sierra stared at Ray as if seeing him for the first time, really seeing him, not just the uniform and the mop. Excuse me. Ava's voice was dangerously low. Are you actually talking back to me? I'm talking to two people who've forgotten what martial arts is supposed to teach, Ray said, setting his mop aside. His posture had changed subtle, but Master Chen noticed it immediately. The slouch was gone, replaced by something coiled ready. Humility, discipline, protection of those who cannot protect themselves. Sierra stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. And what would you know about it, janitor? You clean up our sweat. You're nothing, less than nothing. Sierra, Master Chen warned, but she ignored him. No, I want to hear this, but, she continued. Please enlighten us. Share your vast wisdom about martial arts. Did you learn it from your mop, from your bucket? Ray felt the familiar calm descending over him, the same calm that had carried him through firefights in Kandahar, through impossible missions where the odds of survival were measured in single digits. His squad had called him the Steel Ghost, because of that calm, because of the way he could disconnect from everything except the mission, the objective, the necessary action. You're right, he said quietly. I am just a janitor. I clean floors, I empty trash, I do honest work for honest pay. But I also know that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about controlling yourself. It's about choosing not to fight even when you can. Ava laughed harsh and mocking. Even when you can, oh, that's rich. You think you could fight us. You think you could last 10 seconds in this ring. Ava, enough, Master Chen said more firmly. Class needs to resume. No, Ava said, her eyes never leaving Ray's face. I want to hear him answer. Come on, janitor, you think you could fight a black belt? 2 black belts. Ray glanced at Emma, who was watching with wide eyes. She'd never seen him like this. Never seen the man he'd been before she was born. Before her mother's death had broken something fundamental inside him. He'd promised himself he'd never be that person again. Never let violence touch his life or hers. But sometimes the world didn't give you a choice. Sometimes standing down meant teaching your child that bullies always win, that cruelty goes unchallenged, that dignity is a luxury the poor can't afford. Daddy. Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Ray walked over to her, knelt down again. Remember what I told you about different kinds of winning? She nodded. Sometimes, he said softly, we have to stand up, not because we want to fight, but because walking away would teach the wrong lesson. Do you understand? Emma looked at the twins, then back at her father. They've been mean to you for a long time. Yes? And you never said anything because of me? Because you needed this job. Ray's throat tightened. His 8-year-old daughter understood more than he'd realized. Yes. Emma stood up, her small frame straightening with determination that reminded Ray painfully of her mother. Then I think you should teach them about real strength, Daddy, the kind that protects people. Ray stood, slowly turned back to face the twins. The entire dojo was watching now, students and Master Chen alike. Someone had their phone out recording. Well, Sierra taunted, are you going to fight us or just stand there? If I spar with you, Ray said carefully, and when I win, you'll apologize to every person in this dojo you've disrespected. You'll learn what humility actually means. The twins burst out laughing. When you win, Ava gasped between laughs. Oh, this is precious. You actually think... And when you lose, Sierra interrupted, you're fired. You leave and never come back. Deal. No, Master Chen interjected. I won't allow this. Ray is an employee, not a student. This is inappropriate. It's fine, Master Chen, Ray said quietly. I accept their terms. You don't understand, Chen said urgently, moving closer to Ray and lowering his voice. They're black belts. They've been training for years. They're cruel, yes, but they're also skilled. You could get seriously hurt. Ray met Chen's eyes, and for just a moment the master saw something that made him step back. Something cold and precise, like looking into the scope of a rifle from the wrong end. I understand perfectly, Ray said. The students quickly cleared the center of the dojo, forming a circle. More phones came out. The twins were already in the ring, stretching with exaggerated movements playing to their audience. Should we go easy on him? Ava asked loudly. I mean, we don't want to actually kill the janitor. Just hard enough to teach him his place, Sierra replied. Maybe a broken rib or two. Workers' comp will cover it. Ray walked to the edge of the mat, then did something that made Master Chen's eyes widen. He removed his janitor's uniform shirt, revealing a torso marked by scars, a puckered bullet wound near his left shoulder, shrapnel scars across his ribs, a long surgical scar down his right side. But more than the scars, it was the muscle definition, the way he moved sudden and fluid, that made Chen reassess everything he thought he knew about Ray Walker. Ooh, scary scars, Sierra mocked. What did you fall off your mop bucket? Ray didn't respond. He stepped onto the mat barefoot. He'd removed his work boots and socks with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. He stood in a neutral position, hands at his sides, waiting. Aren't you going to bow? Ava demanded. Show proper respect to your betters. Ray bowed not to them, but to the dojo itself, to the art, to what it was supposed to represent. Then he settled into a stance that made Master Chen inhale sharply. It wasn't from any traditional martial art. It was something hybrid, practical, designed for efficiency rather than form. That's not even a proper stance. Sierra laughed. Did you learn that from YouTube? Begin when you're ready, Ray said simply. The twins exchanged a look, then attacked simultaneously, a coordinated assault they'd practiced hundreds of times. Ava came in high with a roundhouse kick while Sierra went low with a sweep. It was a combination that had never failed them, designed to leave no avenue of escape. Ray wasn't there. He'd moved, not dramatically, not with any wasted motion, just a simple shift of weight and position that put him outside their range. Ava's kick whistled through empty air. Sierra's sweep found nothing. Lucky! Ava snarled, recovering quickly and launching a series of rapid punches. Ray deflected them with minimal movement, using their force against them, redirecting rather than blocking. Each deflection put Ava slightly more off balance. Each redirection pulled her further from her center. Sierra came from behind with a knee strike aimed at his kidney, a blow that would have dropped most people. Ray pivoted, caught her knee with one hand, and used her momentum to guide her past him. She stumbled, caught herself, spun back with fury in her eyes. "Stop playing with us," she shouted, launching a combination of kicks and punches that showcased her black belt skills. But Ray wasn't playing. He was analyzing, cataloging, understanding. Every attack showed him more about their style, their habits, their weaknesses. Ava still telegraphed her kicks. Sierra still stood too wide. They relied on aggression and coordination, but when that failed, they had no backup plan. The crowd was murmuring now. This wasn't going how anyone had expected. The janitor should have been on the ground already begging for mercy. Instead, he moved like water, like smoke, like a ghost there and not there, solid and insubstantial. "Stand still and fight!" Ava screamed, frustration breaking her composure. "I am fighting," Ray said calmly, dodging another combination. "I'm just not fighting the way you want me to." Sierra came in with a flying kick, showy, powerful, the kind of move that looked impressive in tournaments. Ray sidestepped, caught her ankle, and used her momentum to spin her around. She landed hard on the mat, gasping. Ava charged with a scream of rage, abandoning technique for raw aggression. Ray waited until the last possible second, then dropped low, swept her legs, and watched her crash to the mat beside her sister. Both twins scrambled to their feet, breathing hard, their perfect hair now disheveled, their GIs askew. They'd been down for only seconds, but in a real fight, seconds were lifetimes. "You're just running away," Sierra panted, too scared to actually engage. Ray studied them for a moment, then nodded. "You want engagement? All right." This time, when they attacked, Ray didn't evade. He met Ava's punch with a circular block that trapped her arm, pulled her off balance, and sent her spinning into Sierra. As they tangled, he swept both their legs with a single movement, putting them on the mat again. They got up slower this time, fury replaced by something else, uncertainty, maybe even fear. They were black belts. They'd never lost, certainly never to someone like him. "How?" Ava demanded. "You're just a janitor. You're nobody." "I am nobody," Ray agreed. "But I learned a long time ago that nobody can be anybody when they need to be." Master Chen stepped forward. "I think that's enough. The point has been made." "No," Sierra shouted. "We're not done. We're black belts. We don't lose to the help." She charged again, this time with a technique Ray recognized, a military combatives move, not traditional martial arts. Someone had been teaching them more than just tournament fighting. But military combatives was Ray's world, his language, his home. He caught her strike, used a joint lock to control her arm, and took her to the mat with a controlled takedown that left her immobilized but unharmed. Ava rushed to help her sister, but Ray released Sierra and flowed into a defensive position that put him between the twins. "Stop," he said, and there was something in his voice that made both sisters freeze. "You've lost. Accept it with grace or continue, and I'll stop being gentle." "Gentle?" Ava's voice cracked. "You call this gentle? You're not hurt," Ray pointed out. "You're not bleeding. You're not broken. That's gentle. Trust me, you don't want to see the alternative." The dojo was dead silent. Everyone stared at the scene, the janitor standing calmly in the center of the mat, while two black belt CEOs struggled to understand what had just happened. Someone whispered, "Did anyone else see that?" He didn't even really hit them. Emma had moved closer to the mat, her eyes shining with something Ray hadn't seen before: pride. Pure, undiluted pride in her father. "Who are you?" Sierra asked, her voice small, all arrogance gone. "I'm Ray Walker," he said simply. "I'm a janitor. I'm a single father. And a long time ago I was something else. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is what you do next." The twins looked at each other, 28 years of privilege and success crashing against this impossible moment. They'd built their identities on being winners, on being superior, on being untouchable. Now they'd been touched worse. They'd been handled with kid gloves by someone they'd considered beneath notice. "You owe some apologies," Ray reminded them. "To Master Chen, to the students, to everyone you've treated as less than human." You can't be serious, Ava started, but Sierra grabbed her arm. He beat us, Sierra said quietly. Both of us, at the same time, without really trying. She looked at Ray with something approaching respect. You could have hurt us, really hurt us, but you didn't. Violence without purpose is just cruelty, Ray said, and cruelty is the refuge of the weak. Master Chen cleared his throat. I think class is over for tonight. Everyone please gather your things. The students began to disperse, but slowly reluctant to miss the conclusion of this unprecedented drama. The twins remained on the mat, disheveled and defeated, trying to process their new reality. The apologies, Ray said firmly. Sierra stood first, faced Master Chen, and bowed deeply. I apologize for my disrespect, Master Chen. I've dishonored your dojo and your teaching. Ava followed suit, her bow stiff but genuine. I apologize as well. They turned to the remaining students, repeating their apologies. Each word seemed to physically pain them, but they said them. Then they faced Ray. We're sorry, Sierra said. For everything, for treating you like you didn't matter. Everyone matters, Ray said. That's the first lesson of real strength. The second is knowing when to use it and when not to. He walked off the mat, picked up his janitor's shirt, and put it back on. Just like that, he was the invisible man again, the nobody who cleaned their floors. But everyone in that dojo would never see him the same way. Emma ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. That was amazing, Daddy. You were like a superhero. No, baby girl, Ray said, holding her tight. I was just your dad, making sure you knew that standing up for yourself doesn't mean standing on others. Master Chen approached them. Ray, I had no idea. Where did you train? Different places? Ray said vaguely. Different times. Would you consider teaching the students could learn so much from you? Ray shook his head. I'm a janitor, Master Chen. That's all I need to be. But Chen wasn't satisfied. Those scars, that fighting style. You were military, weren't you? Special operations? Ray didn't answer, just gathered Emma's backpack and homework. We should go. It's past Emma's bedtime. As they headed for the door, Sierra called out, Wait! Ray paused but didn't turn around. Will you be back tomorrow to work? I mean, every night, Ray said. Floors don't clean themselves. And we'll be here too, Sierra said. Maybe you could teach us the real stuff. Not just the techniques, but the philosophy, the control. Ray finally turned. The twins stood side by side, their matching GIs wrinkled, their perfect hair messed up their pride in pieces at their feet. But there was something new in their eyes, humility perhaps. The beginning of wisdom. You want to learn, Ray asked. They nodded. First lesson is free, he said. Show up tomorrow in regular clothes, no belts, no ranks. Help me clean the dojo, every inch of it. Then we'll see if you really want to learn. Clean? Ava started to protest, then caught herself. Yes, okay, we'll be here. Ray nodded and led Emma out into the Seattle night. The rain had started, a gentle mist that made the streetlights look like halos. Emma held his hand, tightly, skipping despite the weather. Daddy? Yeah, baby girl. Mom would have been proud of you tonight. Ray's throat tightened. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, taken by a drunk driver on a random Tuesday afternoon. She'd never gotten to see Emma learn to ride a bike, never heard her read her first book, never watched her grow into this remarkable little person. You think so? I know so, Emma said with 8-year-old certainty. She always said you were a hero. Tonight, everyone else got to see it too. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the rain growing heavier. Ray thought about the evening, about the choices that had led him to that moment. After Sarah's death, he'd sworn off violence, sworn off being the soldier, the weapon, the steel ghost. He'd wanted Emma to know him only as a father, not as someone capable of the things he'd done in service to his country. But tonight had shown him something important. You couldn't completely bury who you were. And maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't. The skills that had made him a ghost in Afghanistan had protected his daughter's faith in him tonight. They'd shown her that strength wasn't about size or status or bank accounts. It was about standing up when it mattered, even if you stood alone. Daddy. Yeah? Can you teach me what you know? Ray looked down at his daughter. saw Sarah's determination mixed with his own stubborn streak. "It's not easy, Emma. It takes discipline, patience, sacrifice." "I know," she said solemnly, "but I want to be strong like you, not mean strong like those ladies were, real strong, the kind that protects people." "When you're older," Ray promised. "For now, focus on school. That's your training ground." They reached their apartment building, a weathered brick structure that had seen better decades. 3 floors up, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen so small 2 people could barely fit. But it was home. It was safe, and it was theirs. As Ray tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Will those ladies really come back tomorrow?" "I don't know," Ray answered honestly. "People say things in the moment that they don't always mean." "I think they will," Emma said, yawning. "I think you scared them." "I didn't mean to scare them." "No," Emma clarified. "Not scared like afraid. Scared like when you see something that changes how you understand everything. Like when we learned the earth goes around the sun, not the other way around." Ray marveled at his daughter's insight. "When did you get so wise?" "Tuesday," she said seriously, then giggled at his expression. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, baby girl. Sweet dreams." Ray closed her door softly and moved to the living room, which also served as his bedroom. The couch pulled out into a bed that had definitely seen better days. He sat in the darkness, not bothering with lights, and let the events of the evening wash over him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Sierra Hale. I got your number from Master Chen. We'll be there tomorrow, 6 p.m., before class. Thank you for not destroying us when you could have." Ray didn't respond. Words were cheap, actions expensive. Tomorrow would tell him if the Hale sisters were ready to pay the price for real knowledge. Another buzz, this time from Master Chen. "Ray, I've been researching. You're him, aren't you? Staff Sergeant Raymond Walker. Silver Star, Bronze Star, with Valor, 3 Purple Hearts. The Steel Ghost of Kandahar. Why didn't you ever say anything?" Ray deleted the message without responding. That person, that ghost, had died with Sarah. What remained was just a father trying to raise his daughter right in a world that seemed increasingly wrong, but tonight had cracked something open. Hadn't it? The careful walls he'd built between his past and present had shown their first fissures. Emma had seen him fight. The dojo had seen him fight. Soon the videos those students had taken would spread. And then what? How long before his carefully anonymous life exploded into something he couldn't control? His phone buzzed again. This time a video link from one of his former squad mates, Marcus Tank Thompson, who lived in Portland. "Brother, is this you?" "It's already got 50K views." Ray clicked the link against his better judgment. Someone had uploaded the entire fight to YouTube with the title, "Janitor Destroys 2 Black Belt CEOs, You Won't Believe What Happens Next." The video quality was surprisingly good, catching every moment of the encounter. The comments were already pouring in. "This is why you don't judge people by their job." Those women got humbled. Anyone else notice he never actually struck them, just redirected and controlled? That's mastery. "I trained for 10 years and I've never seen movement like that. This guy is something special." Ray closed the video, but the damage was done. By morning, it would be everywhere. His quiet life, his anonymity, his careful protection of Emma from his past, all of it was about to end. He moved to Emma's door, cracked it open to check on her. She was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around the stuffed bear Sarah had given her before she died. Ray made a decision, then he wouldn't run from this. Running would teach Emma that you could never escape your past, that you should be ashamed of who you were. Instead, he would face it head on, the same way he'd faced the Hale sisters. With control, with purpose, with the quiet strength that had carried him through war zones and personal tragedy alike. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows like an insistent visitor. Ray stood watching the water streak down the glass, distorting the city lights into abstract patterns. Somewhere out there, Ava and Sierra Hale were probably in their luxury penthouse, nursing their bruised egos and trying to make sense of what had happened. He wondered if they would really show up tomorrow if they had the courage to face their assumptions being shattered. His phone rang, not a text, an actual call. The screen showed Colonel James Patterson, his former commanding officer. Ray answered. Sir. Drop the Sir Ray. I'm retired, remember, just Jim now. Patterson's gravelly voice hadn't changed in the 5 years since Ray had last heard it. Saw an interesting video tonight. My daughter sent it to me of all things. Apparently it's trending on TikTok. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Ray said evenly. Patterson chuckled. Right, some other janitor in Seattle who moves like a ghost and has your exact build and scars. Must be a coincidence. Must be. Ray, Patterson's voice grew serious. I know you wanted out. I know after Sarah you needed to disappear. But maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's time to stop hiding who you are. I'm not hiding, I'm just living. You're surviving, Patterson corrected. There's a difference. That little girl of yours, Emma, right? She deserves to know her father, the real one, not just the sanitized version. She knows me. Does she know about the villages you saved, the soldiers you brought home? The fact that you're the reason 32 kids in Afghanistan got to grow up because you stopped a bombing at their school? That was a lifetime ago. It was you, Ray. It's still you. You can't just cut away pieces of yourself and pretend they never existed. Tonight proved that. Ray didn't answer, couldn't answer. Patterson had always been too perceptive, too good at reading his soldiers. Look, Patterson continued, I'm not saying you need to wear your medals or tell war stories, but hiding your strength, your skills, your past, it's not healthy. And now that it's out there, what do you mean? Ray, that video has over 2 million views already. News outlets are picking it up. Mystery janitor with military background schools entitled CEOs. It's only a matter of time before someone identifies you. Ray's stomach dropped. 2 million views. The quiet life he'd built was definitely over. What do I do? He asked, hating the uncertainty in his voice. You do what you've always done, Patterson said. You adapt. You overcome. You protect what matters. And Ray, what matters is that little girl and the example you set for her. Don't teach her to hide from who she is by hiding from who you are. After Patterson hung up, Ray sat in the darkness for a long time. The colonel was right, of course. He usually was. Ray had been so focused on protecting Emma from his violent past that he'd forgotten something crucial. Strength wasn't just about fighting. It was about facing truth, accepting yourself, showing others that you could be more than one thing. He pulled out an old photo album from a box under the couch, one Emma had never seen. Pictures of him in uniform standing with his squad in front of a Humvee. Pictures of Sarah visiting him on base, her smile bright enough to light up the desert. Pictures of the Afghan children his unit had protected playing soccer with a ball the soldiers had bought them. One photo in particular caught his attention, him teaching self-defense to local women in Kandahar, part of a Hearts and Minds campaign. The women were laughing, learning, empowered. He remembered that day clearly, how they'd gone from frightened to fierce in just a few hours, how they'd walked taller when they left. Maybe that was what the Hale sisters needed. Not humiliation, but transformation. Not defeat, but education. They had skill, athleticism, dedication. They just lacked wisdom, humility, understanding of what real strength meant. His phone buzzed with another text from Sierra. We've been talking all night. We want to learn, really learn. Not just fighting, but what you said about protecting others. We have resources, influence. Maybe we could do something good with them if someone showed us how. Ray typed back 6 p.m. Bring work clothes. First lesson, respect isn't given or taken, it's earned through service. We'll be there. Ray put the phone down and made another decision. Tomorrow he would start teaching again. Not as the steel ghost, not as a warrior, but as someone who had learned that the greatest victory was the fight you didn't have to finish. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and gleaming. Through the window, Ray could see stars breaking through the clouds, distant points of light that had been there all along, just hidden. Like his past, like his true self, like the man Emma deserved to see. Tomorrow would bring challenges, the viral video, the questions, the exposure he'd tried so hard to avoid. But it would also bring opportunity, the chance to show Emma that you could be strong without being cruel, skilled without being arrogant, powerful without stepping on others. Ray finally pulled out the couch and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the evening, analyzing it from every angle. The twins' technique had been good but predictable, learned from instructors who focused on competition rather than combat. They'd never faced someone who didn't fight by the same rules, who understood that real violence was chaos, not choreography. But there had been potential there too. When Sierra had used that combatives move, she'd shown adaptability. When Ava had charged with pure rage, she'd shown heart even if misdirected. They were fighters. They just didn't know what they were fighting for. At 3 a.m., Ray gave up on sleep and did what he always did when his mind wouldn't quiet. He trained. Push-ups, sit-ups, burpees, all silent so as not to wake Emma. His body moved through the exercises with mechanical precision, muscle memory, from years of maintaining combat readiness. As dawn broke over Seattle, Ray stood at the window, again watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, two CEOs were probably doing the same thing, preparing for a lesson they didn't fully understand yet. And in her room, Emma slept peacefully, unaware that her life was about to change, that the father she'd always known was about to become something more, not different, just more complete. The steel ghost was dead, Ray reminded himself. But maybe, just maybe, something better could rise from those ashes, something that honored both the warrior he'd been and the father he'd become. Something that could teach his daughter, and perhaps the Hale sisters, that real strength wasn't about being unbeatable. It was about knowing when to stand, when to fight, and when to teach others to do the same. The next evening arrived faster than Ray had anticipated. He'd spent the day fielding calls from reporters declining interview requests and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Emma. She'd gone to school with her head held high, proud of her father in a way that both warmed and worried him. The video had reached 10 million views by lunch, and Master Chen had called 3 times to discuss the situation. Now standing in the dojo at 5:45 p.m., Ray watched the door with the same hypervigilance he'd once reserved for patrol routes in hostile territory. He'd arrived early as always, but tonight felt different. The mop and bucket waited in their usual corner, but he hadn't touched them yet. Instead, he stood in the center of the empty dojo, remembering. The door opened at exactly 6 p.m. Ava and Sierra Hale entered, but Ray almost didn't recognize them. Gone were the designer GIs, the perfect hair, the air of untouchable superiority. They wore simple sweatpants and old t-shirts, their hair pulled back in basic ponytails. They looked younger somehow, more vulnerable, more human. "We're here," Sierra said simply. No trace of her usual arrogance. "Good," Ray said. "The supplies are in the closet. We start with the bathrooms." Ava's face twitched, an automatic protest forming, but Sierra touched her arm. They walked to the supply closet without complaint, gathering cleaning materials with the awkwardness of people who'd never held a mop in their lives. "Have you ever actually cleaned anything?" Ray asked, not unkindly. "We have a service," Ava admitted, 3 times a week for the penthouse, daily for the office. "Then this really will be educational," Ray said, demonstrating the proper way to wring out a mop. "Cleaning teaches humility better than any philosophy book. It's honest work that nobody notices unless it's not done, like a lot of important things in life." They worked in silence for 20 minutes, the twins struggling with techniques Ray could do in his sleep. Sierra kept leaving streaks on the mirror. Ava couldn't get the toilet properly clean, but they didn't complain, didn't quit, didn't make excuses. "Why did you really come back?" Ray asked as they moved to the main floor. The sisters exchanged a look. "We couldn't sleep last night," Sierra admitted. "We kept thinking about what you said about protecting those who can't protect themselves. We've never thought about our strength that way. We've always used it to climb higher," Ava added, wringing out her mop with increasing competence. "To beat competitors, to dominate boardrooms, to win, always to win." "And what has winning gotten you?" Ray asked. "Everything," Sierra said automatically, then paused. "And nothing. We have money, success, respect." "Fear," Ray corrected. "You have fear, not respect. There's a difference." "How do you know?" Ava challenged, some of her fire returning. "Because I've had both," Ray said simply. "Fear keeps people in line, but makes them hate you. Respect makes them follow you willingly, even into hell itself." "You really were military, weren't you?" Sierra said. "The way you moved yesterday, those scars. Special forces. Marines," Ray said, deciding that some truth was necessary. "1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 3 tours in Afghanistan." The videos online are saying you're some kind of war hero, Ava said, mopping with increasing rhythm. They're calling you the Steel Ghost. Ray's hand tightened on his mop handle. The internet says a lot of things. But it's true, isn't it? Sierra pressed. Master Chen looked it up. Staff Sergeant Raymond Walker. Silver Star for saving a school full of children from a suicide bomber. Bronze Star for extracting wounded soldiers under fire. Purple Hearts for bleeding, Ray interrupted harshly. Purple Hearts are for bleeding. Nothing heroic about getting shot. The twins fell silent, focusing on their cleaning. After a moment, Ray sighed. I'm sorry. It's just, that was a different life. A different person. Was it? Ava asked softly. Because the person who protected those children sounds exactly like the person who stood up for his daughter last night. Before Ray could respond, the main door burst open. Master Chen entered, followed by someone Ray hadn't expected to see, Channel 7 news reporter Jennifer Martinez and her camera crew. Absolutely not, Ray said immediately. Ray, please, Chen said. The story is already out there. This is a chance to control the narrative. I said no interviews. Mr. Walker. Martinez stepped forward, her perfectly styled appearance a stark contrast to the twins in their cleaning clothes. People are calling you a hero. They want to know your story. Then they'll be disappointed, Ray said, continuing to mop. You can't just hide from this, Chen insisted. The dojo has gotten 300 new enrollment requests since yesterday. People want to learn from you. They want to learn from a fantasy, Ray corrected. From a viral video that makes them feel good about underdogs winning. That's not real teaching. Sierra surprised everyone by stepping between Ray and the camera. He said no! That means no! Ava joined her sister. This is a private lesson. You need to leave. Martinez looked shocked that the Hale sisters, who she'd probably come to interview as well, were defending the janitor. Ladies, surely you want to share your side of... Our side is that we were wrong, Sierra said firmly. We were bullies, and Mr. Walker taught us a valuable lesson. End of story. Now please leave. The camera operator had been filming despite Ray's objection. Ray moved with that ghost-like speed, not aggressively, but simply placing his hand over the lens. You don't have permission to film me or my students. Your students? Martinez perked up. So you're teaching now? Leave, Ray said quietly, but with the same tone that had made trained killers think twice. Now. Martinez and her crew retreated, but Ray knew this was far from over. The story had taken on a life of its own beyond his control. Thank you, he said to the twins after the crew left. We meant what we said, Ava replied. We were bullies. We've been bullies our whole lives, haven't we? Recognizing it is the first step, Ray said. Changing it is the hard part. They continued cleaning, and Ray began to teach not martial arts, but philosophy. He talked about his grandmother who'd raised him after his parents died, who'd cleaned houses for 40 years and never complained. He talked about dignity and service, about finding meaning in simple tasks, about the meditation of repetitive work. In Afghanistan, he said, surprising himself by sharing, we had this interpreter Ahmad. Brilliant guy, spoke 5 languages, could have done anything. But his day job was sweeping streets. I asked him once why he didn't find better work. You know what he said? The twins shook their heads, genuinely interested. He said, clean streets mean children can play safely. Safe children mean hope for the future. I'm not sweeping streets, I'm sweeping away despair. 2 months later, he died protecting those same children from an IED. Sierra stopped mopping. He died sweeping. He died serving, Ray corrected. There's no small service when it comes from the heart. By the time the regular class was scheduled to begin, the dojo gleamed. The twins were sweating exhausted in a way their regular workouts never achieved, but there was something different in their expression, satisfaction, maybe even pride. Students began arriving, stopping short when they saw the Hale sisters in cleaning clothes working alongside Ray. Whispers rippled through the growing crowd. All right, Ray said to the twins, you've earned your first real lesson, but not here. Not with an audience. Follow me. He led them to a small room behind the main dojo, one used for private lessons. It was simple mats, a mirror, nothing else. First lesson isn't about fighting, Ray said. It's about breathing. Breathing? Ava sounded skeptical. Everything starts with breath, Ray explained. Fear makes you hold it. Anger makes you waste it. Control starts with controlling your breath. For the next hour, he taught them meditation techniques he'd learned from a Buddhist monk in Thailand, breathing exercises from his combat training ways to center themselves that had nothing to do with violence. I don't feel any different, Sierra complained after 30 minutes of breathing exercises. Now spar with each other, Ray instructed. The twins faced off, falling into their familiar patterns. But something was different. Their movements were more fluid, less rigid. They weren't fighting angry anymore. Better, Ray observed. When you breathe properly, you think properly. When you think properly, you fight properly. But more importantly, you know when not to fight at all. A knock on the door interrupted them. Emma peered in, still in her school clothes. Daddy, Master Chen said you were back here. Hey, baby girl, how was school? Emma entered, slowly eyeing the twins warily. These were the women who'd been cruel to her father for 2 years, but Ray noticed she stood straighter, more confident than before. Mrs. Patterson showed the video in class, Emma said, for our lesson on standing up to bullies. Ray groaned. She didn't. Everyone thinks you're so cool. Emma continued, then looked at the twins. Why are you dressed like that? We're learning, Sierra said, attempting a smile. Your father is teaching us. Emma studied them with that penetrating gaze children possessed. Are you going to be mean anymore? The blunt question hung in the air. Ava knelt down to Emma's level. No, we're learning not to be mean. I'm sorry we were cruel to your dad. That was wrong. Emma considered this. Okay, but if you're mean again, he can beat you up worse. Emma, Ray warned, but Sierra laughed genuine surprised laughter. Fair deal, Sierra said. We'll try to earn your forgiveness. Emma nodded solemnly, then turned to Ray. Can I watch homework first? Already done. Mrs. Patterson gave me extra time during recess because everyone kept asking me questions about you. Ray sighed. His quiet life was definitely over. All right, you can watch, but stay against the wall. What followed was unlike any martial arts lesson the twins had experienced. Ray didn't teach them new strikes or kicks. Instead, he taught them to fall safely, to protect themselves, to move without aggression. Your instinct is always to attack, he observed as Sierra threw another punch. But sometimes the best response is no response. Let me show you. He had Ava attack him repeatedly, while he simply moved, never striking back, never even blocking, just flowing around her attacks like water around stones. After 2 minutes, Ava was exhausted, frustrated, defeated, without being touched. This is what you did to us yesterday, she panted. Partially. Yesterday, I also used redirects and controls, but the principle is the same. Use their energy against them. Don't add violence to violence. But how do you win without fighting? Sierra asked. Who says you need to win? Ray countered. Sometimes the victory is in not losing yourself to anger or fear. Sometimes it's in teaching instead of defeating. They trained for another hour, Ray patiently correcting their stances, their breathing, their mindset. Emma watched from the corner, occasionally offering commentary that made the adults smile. You're dropping your shoulder, she told Ava at one point. Daddy always says shoulders stay level. When did he teach you that? Ray asked, surprised. I watch you practice in the morning, Emma admitted. When you think I'm sleeping. Ray felt a mix of pride and concern. He'd tried to keep his training separate from Emma's world, but children saw everything, absorbed everything. Master Chen appeared in the doorway. Ray, there's someone here to see you, says he's an old friend. Ray's danger sense, honed by years of combat, immediately activated. Watch Emma, he told the twins, who nodded seriously. In the main dojo, a man in an expensive suit waited. Ray recognized him immediately, Marcus Tank Thompson, his former squad mate who'd texted him about the video. Tank looked good, prosperous, a far cry from the grunt who'd saved Ray's life in Kandahar. Brother, Tank said, pulling Ray into a crushing hug. Good to see you, Vertical. Tank, what are you doing here? Saw the video, had to come check on you. Make sure you were okay with all this attention. They moved to a quiet corner, away from the curious students preparing for the evening class. I'm fine, Ray said. No, you're not. Tank disagreed. You've been hiding for 3 years pretending to be nobody. Now the whole world knows who you are. They know a janitor who can fight, that's all. Tank shook his head. They're going to dig Ray. Reporters, internet detectives, everyone. They'll find out about the steel ghost, about Sarah, about all of it. You need to be ready. I just want to raise my daughter in peace. That ship has sailed, brother, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Tank glanced toward the back room where Emma's laughter could be heard. Kids need heroes, Ray. Maybe it's time Emma knew hers. She doesn't need to know about the war, about what I did. Not the violence, Tank agreed. But the service, the sacrifice, the lives you saved, that's a legacy worth sharing. Before Ray could respond, a commotion erupted in the main entrance. A group of young men in matching jackets had entered, their posture aggressive, their intention clear. Ray recognized the type immediately, a local martial arts school come to challenge the viral sensation. We're looking for the janitor, their leader announced, a muscled young man with cauliflower ears and MMA gloves. Want to see if he's really as tough as the internet says. Master Chen stepped forward. This is a place of learning, not street fighting. Please leave. Not until we get what we came for, the fighter said, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on Ray. You, him, the ghost. Ray didn't move, didn't respond, just watched with the stillness that preceded violence. Yeah, you're him, the fighter continued. That stillness thing, like in the video? Well, it won't work on trained fighters. We're not some spoiled rich girls. The comment drew Ray's attention to the doorway of the back room. The twins had emerged, Emma behind them, all three watching with concern. You should leave, Ray said quietly. Or what? You'll redirect my energy. The fighter laughed. This isn't a movie, old man. This is real fighting. No, Ray said, standing slowly. Real fighting is terrible and ugly and leaves scars you can't see. What you want is to prove something. There's nothing to prove here. Scared? The fighter taunted. Emma started to move forward, but Sierra caught her shoulder, gently holding her back. The twin CEOs who'd once embodied arrogance now stood protective of a janitor's daughter. I don't fight for ego, Ray said. I don't fight for fun. I don't fight to prove points. So unless you're planning to actually hurt someone here, we're done. The fighter stepped closer, his crew spreading out behind him. Maybe I am planning to hurt someone. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen for people to stop believing fairy tales about janitors and ghosts. The atmosphere in the dojo shifted, became dangerous. Students backed away. Someone called 911. Master Chen tried once more to intervene, but the fighter shoved him aside. That was the mistake. Ray moved, and this time it wasn't the controlled teaching movement he'd shown the twins. This was the steel ghost, swift, precise, devastating. The fighter found himself on the ground before his brain could process what had happened. Ray's knee on his chest, his arm locked in a submission hold that was a millimeter from causing real damage. You pushed an elderly man, Ray said, his voice carrying that battlefield calm that was more terrifying than any shout. You came here looking for violence. You threatened my students. My daughter is watching. So here's what's going to happen. The fighter's crew started forward, but Tank stepped out, his own presence stopping them cold. I wouldn't, Tank said simply. You're going to apologize to Master Chen, Bab, Ray continued. You're going to leave. You're going to tell everyone that what they saw in that video was real, that violence without purpose is the refuge of cowards and bullies. Or I'm going to show you what real fighting actually looks like, and I promise you won't enjoy the lesson. I'm sorry, the fighter gasped immediately. I'm sorry, Master Chen. We'll leave. Ray released him, stepped back. The fighter scrambled to his feet, his crew helping him toward the door. But he turned back, had to have the last word. This isn't over, he said. It is, Ray replied. Because if you come back, if you threaten anyone here again, I won't be teaching. I'll be ending threats permanently. The word hung in the air like a blade. The fighters left quickly, and the dojo erupted in whispers and excitement. Daddy! Emma ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You protected everyone. That's what we do, Ray said, holding her tight. We protect. We serve. We stand between danger and those who can't fight it themselves. The twins approached, their expressions awed. That was different, Ava said. You weren't playing with them like you did with us. You were never a threat, Ray explained. You were bullies, but not dangerous. Those men came here for violence. That requires a different response. Will you teach us that? Sierra asked. The real stuff, not for tournaments or ego, but for protection. Ray looked at them, these privileged women who'd spent their lives at the top of every ladder. That knowledge comes with responsibility. It's not about being capable of violence, it's about choosing not to use it unless absolutely necessary. We understand, Ava said seriously. We want to learn. We want to be better. Ray nodded slowly. Then we continue. But understand what I teach isn't sport. It's survival. It's service. It's sacrifice. Are you prepared for that? The twins exchanged a look, then nodded in unison. Good. Same time tomorrow. We start with falls and rolls you need to learn to protect yourself before you learn to protect others. As the regular class began, Ray noticed something had changed in the dojo's atmosphere. The students looked at him differently now, not with fear or mere curiosity, but with genuine respect. He'd stood between them, and danger had shown that his skills were for service, not show. Master Chen approached him quietly. Ray, I need to say something. For 2 years you've cleaned this place without complaint, endured disrespect with grace. I should have stood up for you. I should have been better. I'm sorry. You gave me a job when I needed one, Ray replied. That's enough. No, it's not. From now on, you're not just our janitor. You're an instructor. Same pay. I know you won't accept more, but with the respect you deserve. Ray started to protest, but Chen raised his hand. The students need to learn what you're teaching the twins. Not just technique, but philosophy, honor, service. Will you consider it? Ray looked at Emma, who was chatting animatedly with some of the younger students, telling them about her father with unbridled pride. Then at the twins who were practicing the breathing exercises he'd taught them, their usual arrogance replaced with focus. Finally at Tank, who gave him a knowing nod. I'll think about it, Ray said. The evening continued with unusual energy. Word of the confrontation had already spread beyond the dojo. Several students were live streaming, sharing the story of the janitor who'd faced down an MMA fighter without throwing a single strike. As the class wound down, Sierra approached Ray with her phone. You need to see this. The video from earlier had been posted with the title, Steel Ghost Protects Dojo from MMA Bullies. It already had 1 million views and climbing. The comments were overwhelming. This man is everything martial arts should be about. Notice how he only acted when they pushed the elderly master. That's honor. My kid is signing up for this dojo tomorrow. We need more people like this in the world. Ray handed the phone back. This is getting out of control. Or maybe it's exactly what needs to happen, Ava suggested. People are hungry for real heroes, for examples of strength used correctly. You could teach so many people. I just want to teach my daughter, Ray said. Then teach her, Sierra said. But let others learn too. Start a movement. Show the world that strength isn't about domination. Ray was saved from responding by the arrival of another unexpected visitor, a woman in military dress blues, her chest decorated with ribbons that Ray recognized immediately. Colonel Patricia Morrison, now Brigadier General Morrison, his former battalion commander. Staff Sergeant Walker, she said formally, then smiled. Ray, it's been too long. General, Ray said automatically, straightening, what brings you here? You do. The video, the story, all of it. We need to talk. She glanced around the crowded dojo. Privately. They stepped outside into the Seattle night. The rain had returned light but steady. Morrison stood under the dojo's awning, looking older but still commanding. The Pentagon is interested, she said without preamble. They want to bring you back not for combat but for training, teaching the next generation what you know. I'm done with that life, General. Are you? Because from what I saw in those videos, you're still very much the warrior we knew. You're just using it differently now. I have a daughter to raise, and what better example to set than serving your country again, but this time as a teacher, not a fighter. Morrison studied him. The position would be here at Joint Base Lewis McChord. You wouldn't have to leave Seattle, wouldn't have to uproot Emma. Regular hours, good pay, full benefits. And you'd be saving lives by training soldiers properly. Ray was quiet for a long moment, watching the rain. Can I think about it? Of course, but Ray, the country needs people like you now more than ever. Not just for your skills, but for your integrity. The Steel Ghost is a legend, but Ray Walker could be something more, an example. After Morrison left, Ray stood in the rain for a while, letting it wash over him like a baptism. 3 years of hiding, of pretending to be nobody, and now everyone wanted him to be somebody again. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Emma needed to see him as he really was not hidden, but whole. He went back inside to find the twins helping Emma with her backpack, the three of them chatting like old friends. The transformation was remarkable. In just one day, the Hale sisters had gone from tormentors to protectors, from arrogance to humility. "Ready to go home?" Ray asked Emma. "Can Ava and Sierra come for dinner?" Emma asked hopefully. "They want to hear your stories." Ray looked at the twins, who seemed genuinely surprised by the invitation. "We don't want to impose," Sierra said quickly. "It's just spaghetti," Ray said, making a decision. "Nothing fancy." "We love spaghetti," Ava said, then laughed at herself. "Actually, I don't think I've had homemade spaghetti in years." They all left together, an unlikely group, a janitor, his daughter, and 2 millionaire CEOs walking through the rain toward a small apartment. But something had shifted, something fundamental. The walls Ray had built were coming down, replaced by bridges he hadn't expected. As they walked, Emma slipped her hand into his. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby girl. I'm proud of you. Not for fighting, but for teaching, for showing people how to be better." Ray squeezed her hand gently. "That's all any of us can do, Emma. Try to be better today than we were yesterday." The rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, preparing the ground for whatever would grow next. And for the first time in 3 years, Ray Walker felt like he was ready to grow too, to become not the steel ghost of his past, or the invisible janitor of his present, but something new, a teacher, a father, an example of strength used wisely. The twins followed close behind their designer shoes, splashing through puddles, their perfect hair ruined by rain, their entire worldview reconstructed in a single day. Tomorrow they would return ready to learn more, to become more. And Ray would teach them just as he would teach Emma, just as he might teach soldiers again. The war was over had been for years, but the mission to protect, to serve, to stand between the darkness and the light, that mission never ended. It just changed shape, adapted to new battlefields, found new ways to matter. As they reached the apartment building, Ray realized that maybe this was what Sarah would have wanted. Not for him to hide his strength, but to use it to light the way for others. To show that real power wasn't about being feared or famous or rich. It was about choosing to serve even when serving meant mopping floors. It was about standing up to bullies even when standing up cost you everything. It was about teaching instead of destroying, building instead of breaking, protecting instead of attacking. The steel ghost was dead, Ray reminded himself as he unlocked his apartment door. But what was emerging from those ashes might be something even more powerful. A man who understood that the greatest battles were won not with fists or weapons, but with wisdom, patience, and the courage to be vulnerable enough to teach. The small apartment felt even smaller with 5 people crowded around the tiny kitchen table, but somehow the warmth made it feel exactly right. Ava and Sierra sat awkwardly on mismatched chairs, trying not to stare at the water stains on the ceiling or the duct-taped corner of the linoleum floor. They'd probably never been in a place like this, Ray thought, watching them process the reality of how he and Emma lived. "This is really good," Sierra said, twirling spaghetti on her fork with surprising clumsiness for someone usually so controlled. "Did you make the sauce from scratch?" "Daddy always makes it from scratch," Emma said proudly. "He says jar sauce tastes like disappointment." Ava laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "Our chef would probably agree. Though I haven't actually been in our kitchen in months." "You have a chef?" Emma's eyes widened. "We have 3, actually," Sierra admitted, looking embarrassed. "One for each meal shift." Emma turned to Ray with an expression of profound confusion. "Why would anyone need 3 people to cook different worlds, baby girl?" Ray said gently. "Not better or worse, just different." The conversation flowed more naturally as the meal progressed. The twins asked careful questions about Ray's military service, clearly curious but respectful of boundaries. Ray found himself sharing more than he'd intended stories about the translators, who became friends, the village elders who taught him about honor, the children who played soccer with deflated balls and still laughed like they'd won the World Cup. "You never talk about the fighting," Ava observed. "Because that's not what mattered," Ray replied. "The fighting was just noise. What mattered was what we protected, what we preserved, what we built after the dust settled." Sierra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face paled. "Oh no." "What?" Ava leaned over to look. "The video from tonight. The MMA fighters. It's everywhere." Sierra showed them her screen. 20 million views. The news outlets are picking it up. "They're calling you—" She paused, glancing at Emma. "What are they calling my daddy?" Emma demanded. "America's real-life superhero," Sierra finished weakly. Ray groaned, putting his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare." "Actually," Ava said slowly, "it might be an opportunity." When Ray looked up sharply, she raised her hands defensively. "Hear me out. You want to teach right, to show people that strength should be used to protect, not dominate. I want to raise my daughter in peace. But that's not going to happen now," Ava said with the blunt honesty of someone used to boardroom negotiations. "The story is out there. You can either let others control it, or you can shape it yourself." "She's right," Sierra added. "We know something about public relations, about managing narratives. We could help." "Why would you do that?" Ray asked suspiciously. The twins exchanged a look. "Because in one day you've taught us more about real strength than 5 years of black belt training," Sierra said. "Because we've been everything wrong with martial arts, using it for ego, for dominance, for showing off. You could help change that culture. Plus," Ava added with a small smile, "we owe you about 2 years' worth of apologies. Consider this a down payment." Emma had been quiet, processing the adult conversation with the intensity of a child who knew something important was happening. "Daddy, are you famous now?" "I hope not, sweetheart. But if you are," Emma continued seriously, "you could teach lots of people to be good, right? Like you're teaching them." She pointed at the twins. Before Ray could answer, there was a knock at the door. Ray's instincts immediately sharpened. Unexpected visitors at night were rarely good news. He moved to the door, carefully checking the peephole. An elderly Asian woman stood in the hallway, dressed in traditional clothing that seemed out of place in the rundown apartment building. Ray opened the door cautiously. "Mr. Walker." Her English was accented but clear. "My name is Kumiko Tanaka. I am Master Chen's mother." Ray's surprise must have shown because she smiled. "May I come in? I have traveled from Japan to meet you." Ray stepped aside, and the elderly woman entered with a grace that belied her age. She surveyed the small apartment without judgment, her eyes landing on Emma with warmth. "You must be Emma," she said. "Your father speaks of you constantly at the dojo." "He does?" Emma seemed pleased. "Mrs. Tanaka," Ray began, but she raised a hand. "Please call me Kumiko. I have come because my son called me about what happened, about who you really are." She studied Ray with eyes that had seen decades of life. "You studied our arts, yes, but you learned something more." "Well, I learned from many teachers," Ray said carefully. Kumiko nodded. "The true way is not about style or technique. It is about spirit. And your spirit, Mr. Walker, is why I am here." She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph. "This was my husband." Ray looked at the black and white image of a young Japanese man in military uniform. Not Japanese military, American. "He served in the 442nd Infantry Regiment during World War II, Kumiko explained. The Nisei soldiers. He fought for a country that had imprisoned his family because he believed in something greater than prejudice or fear." "I've heard of the 442nd, Ray said with respect. "Most decorated unit in U.S. military history. My husband used to say that the greatest courage was not in fighting enemies, but in protecting those who called you enemy until they could see you as friend." Kumiko looked at the twins. "You are teaching this lesson now, yes." The twins shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "We're trying to learn," Sierra said. "Learning requires emptying yourself of what you think you know," Kumiko said. "Are you prepared for that?" "We thought we were black belts," Ava admitted. But watching Ray, we realize we know nothing about real martial arts. Kumiko smiled. Now you are ready to begin. She turned back to Ray. My son's dojo has good bones but weak spirit. Too much focus on competition, on belts, on hierarchy. You could change this. I'm just a janitor, Ray said. No, Kumiko said firmly. You are a teacher who happens to clean. There is no shame in honest work, but hiding your gift is not humility. It is theft from those who could learn. Emma tugged on Ray's shirt. She's right, Daddy. You're really good at teaching. You taught me fractions when Mrs. Patterson couldn't remember. The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone watching Ray wrestle with the decision. Finally, he sighed. What would you have me do? Teach, Kumiko said simply. Not just techniques, but the way. The real way. My son will support you. These two, she gestured at the twins, will be your first senior students. Us, Sierra squeaked, but we're terrible. You just said we know nothing. Exactly. Kumiko smiled. Empty cups ready to be filled. You have strength and discipline, you just lack wisdom. Ray can provide that. Another knock at the door interrupted them. This time Ray found Tank standing in the hallway with someone else, a young man in a wheelchair wearing an army t-shirt. Ray, this is Specialist James Crawford, Tank said. He saw the videos, he needs your help. Ray invited them in the small apartment now packed with 7 people. Crawford was maybe 25, his legs clearly paralyzed, his eyes holding that hollow look Ray recognized from too many wounded warriors. I got hit by an IED outside Kabul, Crawford said without preamble. Lost the use of my legs, most of my squad. Doctors say I'll never walk again. I've been thinking about... He trailed off, glancing at Emma. Emma, why don't you show Mrs. Tanaka your room, Ray suggested. But Daddy... Please, baby girl. Emma reluctantly led Kumiko down the short hallway, though Ray suspected the elderly woman's hearing was sharp enough to catch the conversation anyway. You've been thinking about ending it, Ray said quietly once Emma was gone. Crawford nodded, tears starting to flow. What's the point? I was a warrior. Now I'm nothing. Ray knelt beside the wheelchair, putting himself at Crawford's eye level. You're not nothing. You're wounded. There's a difference. I can't fight anymore. Can't serve. Can't even stand. Standing isn't about legs, Ray said. It's about spine. And fighting isn't about throwing punches. It's about refusing to surrender to despair. Easy for you to say, Crawford said bitterly. You can still do everything. You're the steel ghost. I saw the videos. You move like water, like wind. I'll never move again. Ray was quiet for a moment, then made a decision. Sierra Ava helped me move the table. They quickly cleared a space in the small living room. Ray sat on the floor and gestured for Tank to help Crawford down from his wheelchair. Once Crawford was seated on the floor, Ray positioned himself across from him. Hit me, Ray said. What? You have arms, upper body, core. Hit me. Crawford threw a weak punch that Ray easily deflected. Harder, with intention. The next punch had more force. Ray showed him how to generate power from his core, how to use his seated position for stability, how to adapt traditional techniques for his new reality. Martial arts isn't about kicks and footwork, Ray explained as they worked. It's about using what you have to its fullest potential. You have a sharp mind, strong arms, and a warrior spirit. That's more than enough. For an hour, Ray worked with Crawford, showing him seated self-defense techniques, adaptation strategies, ways to maintain warrior readiness despite his limitations. The twins watched in fascination as Ray modified every technique for wheelchair use, creating an entirely new fighting system on the fly. This is incredible, Crawford said, sweating but smiling for the first time. I could actually defend myself like this. You could teach others like this, Ray corrected. There are thousands of wounded warriors who think they're done. You could show them they're not. Emma and Kumiko had returned watching from the hallway. Emma's eyes were bright with pride as she watched her father transform a suicidal soldier into someone with purpose again. I want to learn more, Crawford said. Will you teach me? We'll teach each other, Ray replied. You'll show me the limits and how to overcome them. I'll show you that there are no real limits, just obstacles to adapt around. Tank helped Crawford back into his wheelchair. This is what you should be doing, Ray. Not hiding, teaching, healing, showing people that strength comes in many forms. The apartment's too small, Ray said, but his resistance was weakening. Actually, Sierra said slowly, Ava and I own a building downtown. It used to be a factory, but we converted it to office space. The ground floor is empty, 10,000 square feet high ceilings, perfect for a dojo. We couldn't afford, Ray started. Free for the first year, Ava interrupted. After that, we'll work out something based on what the school can afford. Consider it an investment in something that matters. You'd do that? Ray asked skeptically. We made our fortune in tech by being ruthless, Sierra admitted. Maybe it's time we gave back, built something that helps people instead of just making money. Kumiko stood moving with surprising agility for her age. It is decided then. You will teach. My son's dojo will support you send students who are ready for true learning. These two, she gestured at the twins, will help you build it. And this one, she pointed at Crawford, will be your reminder that strength is not about what you can do, but what you overcome. I haven't agreed to anything, Ray protested. Daddy, Emma said quietly, Mom would want you to do this. The room went silent. Emma rarely mentioned her mother, the wound still too fresh, even after 3 years. She always said you were meant to teach, Emma continued, that you had gifts that should be shared. She said hiding your light didn't make other people shine brighter, it just made the world darker. Ray's throat tightened. Sarah had said exactly that the night before she died. They'd been arguing about him taking a security contractor job that would have paid 3 times what he made now. She'd wanted him to teach instead, to share his knowledge, to build something meaningful. All right, he said finally. We'll try it, but we do it right. No belts, no tournaments, no ego. We teach practical protection, philosophical wisdom, and personal growth. We take anyone who wants to learn, regardless of ability to pay. That's not a sustainable business model, Ava started, then caught herself. Sorry, old habits. It's not a business, Ray corrected. It's a mission. The group spent the next 2 hours planning the small apartment, buzzing with an energy it hadn't felt in years. The twins offered to handle the business side, permits, insurance, marketing. Tank volunteered to help with instruction, bringing in other veterans who could teach. Crawford promised to spread the word through the wounded warrior community. Kumiko said she would return to Japan but would send book scrolls and training materials that had been in her family for generations. As everyone prepared to leave, Sierra pulled Ray aside. There's something else. The MMA fighter from tonight, his name is Brad Kowalski. He's got a reputation for holding grudges. He'll be back. I know, Ray said simply. Doesn't that worry you? Ray looked at Emma, who was showing Crawford her math homework, explaining how her dad made everything into a lesson. What worries me is raising a daughter who thinks violence is the answer. Kowalski is just noise. He's dangerous noise, Sierra insisted. He's got a crew connections to some rough people. I've faced worse, Ray said, not boasting, just stating fact. After everyone left, Ray and Emma cleaned up together, washing dishes in comfortable silence. Finally, Emma asked, Are we going to be okay, Daddy, with all these changes? Ray dried his hands and knelt beside his daughter. Change is just life refusing to stand still. We'll adapt, overcome, and grow stronger. That's what we do. Like the Marines? Like the Walkers, Ray corrected. Your mom adapted to being a military wife. I adapted to being a civilian. You adapted to losing her. We're survivors, Emma. But more than that, we're thrivers. Emma hugged him tightly. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby girl. As Ray tucked Emma into bed, she asked one more question. Do you think Mom can see us? See what you're doing? Ray smoothed her hair gently. I think she knows. And I think she's proud of both of us. After Emma fell asleep, Ray returned to the living room and pulled out a box he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his medals, his unit patches, and a journal he'd kept during his deployments. He opened it to a random page, his own handwriting from a decade ago jumping out at him. The hardest part isn't the fighting. It's coming home and trying to find purpose in a world that doesn't understand what you've seen, what you've done, what you've become. How do you translate warrior into civilian? How do you explain that your greatest skill is violence, but your deepest desire is peace? Ray closed the journal and looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. Tomorrow he would start building something new. Not a traditional dojo, not a business, but a place where warriors could learn to be peaceful, where the peaceful could learn to be strong, where everyone could discover that true power came from service, not domination. His phone buzzed with a text from General Morrison. Offer stands. Military could use someone teaching adaptive combat to wounded warriors. Think about it. Then another from Master Chen. My mother called. She's never been wrong about someone. The dojo is yours to use whenever you need. And finally one from Sierra, and Ava sent jointly, thank you for showing us what we could be instead of what we were. See you tomorrow, Sensei. Ray smiled at that last one. Sensei, teacher. He'd been many things, Marine husband, widower, janitor. But maybe teacher was what he was meant to be all along. The rain had stopped and moonlight filtered through the clouds, illuminating the small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was home. And tomorrow it would be the launching point for something larger, something that could change lives, save souls, and show the world that strength wasn't about being unbeatable. It was about getting beaten and choosing to stand anyway. It was about facing overwhelming odds and refusing to quit. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, even when the cost was everything. Ray moved to his makeshift bed on the couch, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind was already working through lesson plans, adaptation techniques, ways to reach not just the physically wounded, but the spiritually broken. He thought about Crawford, about the light that had returned to his eyes when he realized he could still be a warrior. That was the real victory, not defeating opponents, but resurrecting hope. Around 2 a.m., his phone rang. The number was blocked, which immediately put Ray on alert. Yeah? Is this Ray Walker? The voice was young, scared. Who's asking? My name is Tyler. I was with Brad tonight at the dojo. He's planning something bad. Ray sat up, fully alert. What kind of something? He's humiliated, angry. He's talking about coming after you where it hurts. Your daughter. I heard him say. The line went dead. Ray was moving before his conscious mind caught up, checking Emma's room, securing the windows, running through threat assessments with the efficiency of someone who'd done it countless times in much more dangerous places. Emma slept peacefully, unaware of the potential danger. Ray stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, and made a decision. Running would teach her fear. Hiding would teach her shame. But facing threats head-on, with wisdom and preparation, that would teach her courage. He sent a text to Tank, possible threat to Emma. Need backup for school tomorrow. The response was immediate. On it. Nobody touches our family. Then to the twins. Change of plans? Need to accelerate the dojo timeline. Can the space be ready in a week? Sierra responded. We'll make it happen. What's wrong? Nothing I can't handle, but I want a secure place to teach with controlled access. Understood. We'll have contractors there at dawn. Ray spent the rest of the night planning, preparing, transforming from reactive to proactive. If Kowalski wanted a war, he'd find himself facing not just the Steel Ghost, but an entire community of warriors who understood that protecting the innocent wasn't just a duty, it was a privilege. As dawn broke over Seattle, Ray stood ready. The janitor was gone. The ghost was evolving. What emerged would be something new, a teacher, a protector, a beacon for those who'd lost their way in the darkness. The phone rang again. This time it was Principal Matthews from Emma's school. Mr. Walker, I'm calling to ask if you'd consider teaching a self-defense seminar for our students. After seeing the videos, the Parent Association voted unanimously to request your help. We've had some bullying incidents, and we think your approach protection without aggression is exactly what our kids need. As soon as possible, we can pay. No payment necessary, Ray interrupted. It's service. I'll do it. After hanging up, Ray realized the universe was conspiring to push him toward his new purpose. Every phone call, every request, every person who entered his life was pointing in the same direction. Teach, protect, serve, lead. Emma woke up to find Ray making breakfast a full spread instead of their usual cereal. What's the occasion? She asked sleepily. New beginnings, Ray said, plating her eggs. Everything changes today, baby girl. You ready for an adventure? Emma grinned, fully awake now. With you always. As they ate, Ray explained the potential threat in terms Emma could understand without being terrified. She listened seriously, then said, "So we're not hiding." "Never. We face our problems with wisdom and courage." "Like Marines, Pipa." "Like walkers," Ray said again, reinforcing their family identity. "We don't start fights, but we don't run from them either." A knock at the door interrupted breakfast. Ray approached carefully, but it was just Crawford out of his wheelchair and supporting himself on crutches. "You stood," Ray said, surprised. "Not for long, and it hurts like hell," Crawford admitted. "But the doctors were wrong. Working my core like you showed me, it activated something. I might not walk normally again, but I won't be wheelchair-bound forever." "That's incredible," Emma said, eyes wide. Crawford looked at Ray with tears in his eyes. "You gave me hope when I had none. Let me return the favor. I've got 20 wounded warriors ready to train, ready to learn, ready to teach others. We want to be part of whatever you're building." Ray felt something shift inside him, a wall finally crumbling completely. This wasn't just about him anymore, wasn't about hiding or staying safe. It was about community, about purpose, about showing the world that strength came in infinite forms. "Welcome to the team, Tia," Ray said, extending his hand. Crawford shook it firmly. "What do we call this new dojo?" Ray thought for a moment, then looked at Emma. "What do you think, baby girl?" Emma considered seriously, then smiled. "Phoenix Way, because it's about rising from ashes, becoming something new and better." "Phoenix Way it is," Ray agreed. As they prepared to leave for school, Ray's phone buzzed with notifications. The videos had gone beyond viral, they were becoming a movement. Real strength was trending. People were sharing stories of standing up to bullies without violence, of protecting others, of choosing service over selfishness. But among the positive messages was one that made Ray's blood chill, a photo of Emma's school sent from an unknown number with the caption, "See you soon." Ray's expression didn't change, but Emma noticed his tension. "Daddy?" "It's fine," he said calmly. "Just someone trying to scare us, but we don't scare, do we?" "Never," Emma said firmly, though her hand found his and held tight. As they walked to school, Ray noticed Tank's truck parked strategically near the entrance. 2 other vehicles with veterans he recognized were positioned at other corners. The message was clear: Emma Walker was protected. Principal Matthews met them at the entrance. "Mr. Walker, I heard about the situation. We've increased security and the police are aware." "Thank you," Ray said, then knelt beside Emma. "Remember what I taught you. Awareness, avoidance, action," Emma recited. "See danger, avoid if possible, act if necessary." "That's my girl. Tank will pick you up today, okay?" Emma nodded and headed into school with her head high, refusing to show fear. Ray watched her go, proud and terrified in equal measure. "She's tough," Matthews observed. "She's had to be," Ray replied, "but I want her to be tough by choice, not necessity." "That's why what you're doing matters," Matthews said. "Teaching kids and adults that strength is about more than fighting. When can you start the seminars?" "Tomorrow," Ray decided. "After what's happening sooner is better than later." As Ray left the school, he spotted a familiar figure across the street. Brad Kowalski, watching, waiting. Ray didn't approach, didn't engage, just met his eyes and held them until Kowalski looked away first. The message was clear. "I see you. I'm ready. Make your move." But Kowalski didn't move, not yet. He was waiting for something, planning something. Ray could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. Ray's phone rang. It was Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7. "Mr. Walker, I know you declined an interview, but something's happened you should know about. Brad Kowalski just did a live stream claiming you're a fraud, that the videos were staged. He's challenging you to a public fight. Winner takes all." "Takes all what?" "He says if he wins, you admit you're a fake and disappear. If you win, he'll donate $100,000 to wounded warrior charities." Ray was silent for a moment, processing. It was a trap, obviously, but also an opportunity. "When and where?" "You're not seriously considering when and where," Ray repeated. "He says tomorrow night at the Seattle Center Arena. He's already selling tickets, turning it into an event." Ray hung up and immediately called his newly formed team. Within an hour, they had a plan. This wouldn't be just a fight, it would be a demonstration of everything Phoenix Way stood for. "We turn his challenge into our platform," Sierra suggested during their strategy session. Show the difference between violence for ego and skill for service. I'll fight, Ray said, but on our terms. The Seattle Center Arena hummed with an energy that made Ray's skin crawl. 20,000 people had packed into the venue, drawn by the promise of seeing the viral sensation Steel Ghost face off against an MMA fighter with a bruised ego and something to prove. The event had exploded across social media in less than 24 hours, with Kowalski's team turning it into a spectacle that felt more like a gladiator match than a martial arts demonstration. Ray stood in a makeshift preparation room beneath the arena, surrounded by his unlikely team. Tank was wrapping his hands with the methodical precision of someone who'd done it countless times before combat missions. The twins, dressed in simple training gear instead of their usual designer athletic wear, were handling media requests and coordinating with security. Crawford sat in his wheelchair, a laptop across his lap, monitoring social media and coordinating with the 24 wounded warriors who'd shown up to support Ray. "This is insane," Ava said, checking her phone for the 100th time. "The live stream already has 3 million viewers waiting and the fight hasn't even started." "It's not a fight," Ray corrected quietly. "It's a lesson. We stick to the plan." The plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Ray would demonstrate the difference between violence and protection, between ego and service. But plans rarely survived first contact with reality, and Ray could feel something wrong in the atmosphere, like the pressure drop before a storm. Emma sat on a bench nearby, wearing a Phoenix Way t-shirt that Sierra had rush-ordered. She was trying to be brave, but Ray could see the worry in her eyes. The threats had continued throughout the day, becoming increasingly specific. Tank's team had intercepted 2 attempts to approach Emma at school, both by men claiming to be reporters but carrying no credentials. "You don't have to do this, Daddy," Emma said quietly. Ray knelt beside her, taking her small hands in his scarred ones. "Sometimes we have to stand up. Not because we want to, but because walking away would let darkness win. This isn't about Kowalski. It's about showing thousands of people that strength doesn't mean destroying others." "But what if he hurts you?" "Physical hurt heals," Ray said gently. "But letting a bully win because we're afraid that kind of hurt lasts forever." Master Chen entered the room, followed by his mother. Kumiko moved with surprising grace through the chaos, her presence immediately calming. She approached Ray with a simple wooden box. "This belonged to my husband," she said, opening it to reveal a simple black belt worn with age and use. "He wore it when he taught, never when he fought. He said teaching required more courage than fighting ever did." Ray accepted the belt with reverence. "I'm honored, but I can't—" "You must," Kumiko interrupted. "Not as a rank, but as a reminder. Tonight you are not a fighter. You are a teacher. The world is your classroom." The door burst open and Jennifer Martinez rushed in with her camera crew. "Mr. Walker Kowalski just announced he's bringing in 2 additional fighters. He's turning this into a gauntlet match. You'll have to face all 3. The room erupted in protest, but Ray remained calm. "Let him. More opportunities to teach." "This is getting out of hand," Sierra said, her CEO instincts kicking in. "We should call this off-site breach of agreement." "No," Ray said firmly. "Running now would undo everything. Emma, what did Mom always say about bullies?" Emma straightened, reciting from memory. "The only thing necessary for evil to win is for good people to do nothing." "Edmund Burke, by way of Sarah Walker." Ray smiled. "Your mom was smart." Tank's phone buzzed. He answered, his face darkening as he listened. "Ray, we've got a problem. Seattle PD just intercepted communications suggesting Kowalski's people are planning something during the match. They can't specify what, but they're recommending we cancel." "If we cancel, they win without throwing a punch," Ray said. He turned to Crawford. "Can your people provide security for Emma?" "Already done," Crawford said. 6 wounded warriors, all combat veterans, all mobile despite injuries. Nobody gets near her. Ray nodded, then addressed the room. "Everyone knows their role. This isn't just about me. It's about showing the world what Phoenix Way represents. Strength through service, protection without aggression, honor in all things." The announcement system crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, the exhibition begins in 5 minutes." Ray stood, and Kumiko stepped forward to tie the worn belt around his waist. "Remember," she said softly, "water defeats rock not through force, but through persistence. Be water tonight." The walk to the arena floor felt both endless and too short. The roar of the crowd was deafening, a mix of excitement and bloodlust that reminded Ray uncomfortably of ancient Rome. The cage stood in the center, a modern coliseum where violence was packaged as entertainment. Kowalski was already there, flanked by two other fighters Ray recognized from the local MMA circuit. They were putting on a show shadowboxing and playing to the crowd. Kowalski had a microphone working the audience like a carnival barker. "There he is, folks. The janitor who thinks he's a warrior, the fake ghost who's about to be exposed." Ray entered the cage without fanfare, without posturing. He simply walked to the center and stood still, letting the chaos wash over him without touching him. The crowd gradually quieted, unsettled by his calm. 3 against 1. Ray said, his voice somehow carrying despite speaking at normal volume. "Those odds seem about right for what you need to feel brave." The crowd oohed at the burn, but Ray wasn't playing to them. He was focused on the thousands of young people watching online, the bullied kids, the wounded warriors, the people who needed to see that strength wasn't about domination. "Here's how this works," Kowalski snarled. "You face each of us for 1 round. If you're still standing after 3 rounds, you win. When you lose, you admit you're a fraud and disappear forever. And when I win," Ray said calmly, "you donate the 100,000 to wounded warriors and attend Phoenix Way for 6 months to learn what real strength means." "Deal." Kowalski laughed. "Ring the bell." The first fighter, a stocky wrestler named Diego, charged immediately. Ray moved like smoke, never where Diego expected, never using more energy than necessary. Every time Diego lunged, Ray redirected him into the cage walls. Every takedown attempt ended with Diego on the mat, while Ray remained standing. "Fight back!" Diego roared in frustration. "I am fighting," Ray replied. "I'm fighting your ego, your anger, your need to hurt, and I'm winning without throwing a single strike." The crowd began to murmur. This wasn't what they'd expected. Where was the violence, the blood, the spectacle? Diego, exhausted and humiliated, threw a wild haymaker. Ray caught his arm, used a simple Aikido redirect, and guided Diego to the mat with surprising gentleness. Then he helped him up. "You're strong," Ray told him loud enough for everyone to hear. "But strength without control is just chaos. Want to learn control?" Diego, breathing hard, looked confused. The round ended before he could answer. The second fighter, a kickboxer named Marcus, had been watching carefully. He came in measured, technical, trying to solve the puzzle of Ray's movement. But Ray shifted styles seamlessly from Aikido to Wing Chun to Krav Maga to systems Marcus had never seen. "What are you?" Marcus asked after his 5th failed combination. "I'm a teacher," Ray replied. "And this is your lesson. Fighting systems are just languages. When you speak them all, you realize they're all saying the same thing: protect, preserve, survive." Marcus actually smiled. "Show me." For the rest of the round, Ray did exactly that. He demonstrated how Marcus's kicks could be more efficient, how his stance was wasting energy, how small adjustments could make him twice as effective. The crowd watched in growing amazement as the fight transformed into an impromptu seminar. When the round ended, Marcus bowed to Ray. "Thank you, Sensei." Kowalski was furious. "This isn't what we agreed to. You're supposed to fight." "I am fighting," Ray said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm fighting ignorance. I'm fighting the idea that violence is strength. I'm fighting the culture that says hurting others makes you powerful." The crowd was fully engaged now, many recording on their phones. The online viewership had swelled to 10 million and climbing. Comments were pouring in supporting Ray's approach, calling for Kowalski to stand down. But Kowalski was beyond reason. He entered the cage for the 3rd round with brass knuckles barely concealed in his gloves, a violation that the corrupt referee deliberately ignored. "I'm going to destroy you," Kowalski hissed. Ray's expression didn't change. "You're going to try." Kowalski came in fast and vicious, the brass knuckles making every punch potentially lethal. Ray's entire demeanor shifted. This wasn't sport anymore, this was combat. The ghost emerged fully for the first time since Afghanistan. Ray didn't just evade now, he controlled. Every one of Kowalski's attacks was turned against him. A punch meant to break Ray's jaw ended with Kowalski's fist hitting the cage post. A kick aimed at Ray's kidney resulted in Kowalski's leg being swept and controlled. You brought weapons to a teaching moment, Ray said, his voice carrying that battlefield calm that had terrified enemies in 3 different countries. That changes things. In one fluid motion, Ray disarmed Kowalski of the brass knuckles holding them up for everyone to see. The crowd gasped, then began booing Kowalski's obvious cheating. This is what fear looks like, Ray announced. So afraid of losing that you cheat so weak that you need weapons against an unarmed opponent. Kowalski enraged and exposed abandoned all technique. He charged with pure rage, exactly what Ray had been waiting for. Ray stepped aside at the last moment, used Kowalski's momentum against him, and applied a textbook rear naked choke. Not to hurt, not to humiliate, but to control. Yield, Ray said quietly in Kowalski's ear. Yield and learn, or pass out and learn nothing. Kowalski struggled for 10 seconds before tapping out. Ray released him immediately, then did something that shocked everyone. He helped Kowalski to his feet and raised his hand. This man had the courage to face me, Ray announced. He made mistakes, let fear and anger control him, but he stood in this cage. That takes a certain kind of strength. Brad Kowalski, the offer stands. Come to Phoenix Way. Learn what real strength means. Not to hurt, but to heal. Not to destroy, but to build. Kowalski stared at Ray in confusion, his worldview shattered. You're raising my hand. I cheated. I tried to hurt you. And you failed, Ray said simply. But failure is just education in disguise. The question is, will you learn from it? The crowd was on its feet now, but not cheering for violence. They were witnessing something unprecedented transformation in real-time philosophy and action strength redefined. But the night wasn't over. As Ray turned to leave the cage, the lights suddenly cut out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, casting everything in an eerie red glow. In the chaos, Ray heard Emma scream. He moved faster than thought, vaulting the cage wall and sprinting toward where he'd last seen his daughter. The wounded warriors had formed a protective circle, but 3 men in masks were trying to break through. They hadn't counted on Crawford. Despite his injuries, Crawford had risen from his wheelchair and was fighting with the adapted techniques Ray had taught him. Using his crutches as weapons, his seated defensive positions, he was holding off an attacker twice his size. Ray arrived like a force of nature. The first attacker never saw him coming, a simple chokehold, and he was unconscious. The second tried to pull a knife but found his wrist broken before the blade cleared its sheath. The third, seeing his partners down, tried to run, but Tank clotheslined him into submission. Emma? Ray called out. I'm okay, Daddy. Emma emerged from behind Crawford, shaken but unharmed. Crawford protected me. He was amazing. Crawford was back in his wheelchair, breathing hard but grinning. Adaptive combat work, Sensei. You were right. We're not limited, just different. The lights came back on to reveal the arena in chaos. Police were arresting the attackers and several of Kowalski's crew who'd been involved in the plan. Kowalski himself stood in the cage looking horrified at what his vendetta had nearly caused. Jennifer Martinez appeared with her camera crew. Mr. Walker, can you comment on what just happened? Ray pulled Emma close, his arm protective around her shoulders. What happened is that strength showed itself in many forms tonight. Crawford's courage, despite his injuries. The veterans who protected my daughter. Even Mr. Kowalski's horror at what his anger nearly caused. This is what Phoenix Way is about, recognizing that we're all capable of both darkness and light. The choice is which one we feed. Are you pressing charges? Martinez asked. Ray looked at Kowalski, who was walking toward them. The MMA fighter looked broken, his swagger completely gone. I'm sorry, Kowalski said, his voice thick with emotion. I never meant. I didn't know they would. Your daughter. He dropped to his knees. I'm so sorry. Emma surprised everyone by walking over to Kowalski. My daddy says sorry doesn't fix things, but it starts fixing things. Do you want to start? Kowalski looked up at the 8-year-old girl he'd inadvertently put in danger, tears streaming down his face. Yes, God, yes, I want to start. Ray helped Kowalski to his feet. 6 months at Phoenix Way. Not as punishment, but as transformation. You've got strength, Brad. Learn to use it for something better than ego. I'll be there, Kowalski promised. Every day. The crowd was witnessing something they'd never expected: redemption in real-time forgiveness in action. The online viewership had reached 50 million, with comments pouring in from around the world. The Phoenix Way was trending globally. General Morrison appeared through the crowd in full dress uniform. Outstanding Demonstration Staff Sergeant. The Pentagon is officially interested in funding Phoenix Way as a national program for wounded warriors and at-risk youth. It's not about the money, General, Ray said. No, Morrison agreed. It's about the mission, and your mission just got a lot bigger. Over the next hour, the arena transformed from a venue for violence into something else entirely. The twins had set up tablets for people to sign up for Phoenix Way classes. Crawford was demonstrating adaptive techniques to a group of disabled veterans. Master Chen and his mother were teaching breathing exercises to children who'd been frightened by the blackout. And in the center of it all, Ray stood with Emma, watching their accidental movement take shape. Phoenix Way wasn't just a dojo anymore. It was becoming a philosophy, a community, a revolution in how people thought about strength. Daddy, Emma said quietly, I'm proud of you. Why's that, baby girl? Because you didn't hurt anyone even when they tried to hurt us. You showed them a better way. That's what heroes do, right? They don't just beat bad guys, they turn bad guys into good guys. Ray hugged his daughter tightly. You're wise beyond your years, Emma Walker. I learned from the best, she said simply. As the crowd began to disperse, people approached Ray one by one. A mother with a bullied son wanting to learn confidence without aggression. A police officer interested in de-escalation techniques. A teenage girl who'd been assaulted and wanted to feel safe again. Each story, each request, each desperate need for what Ray could teach. Sierra approached with a tablet. Ray, we've had 10,000 sign-ups in the last hour. The building we offered won't be big enough. Then we'll need multiple locations, Ray said. This isn't just about Seattle anymore. Ava nodded. We've already had inquiries from Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Veterans groups, women's shelters, schools, everyone wants Phoenix Way. Ray looked at his team tank, the Warriors, the twins, Crawford, Master Chen, and his mother. 6 months ago, he'd been an invisible janitor trying to disappear. Now he was at the center of something that could change lives across the country, maybe the world. We'll need more teachers, Ray said. Already on it, Crawford said. I've got 50 wounded warriors ready to train as instructors. They want to be part of this. Kowalski approached hesitantly. I know I have no right to ask, but could I help? I mean, after I learn what you have to teach. I've got connections in the MMA world. Fighters who are tired of just hurting people, who want their skills to mean something more. Ray studied the man who'd been his enemy just hours before. Everyone gets a second chance at Phoenix Way. That's the rule. You show up, you work, you transform. Think you can handle that? I'll handle whatever you throw at me, Kowalski said firmly. I owe you that. I owe your daughter that. Emma tugged on Ray's shirt. Tell him about the promise. What promise? Ray asked. The Phoenix promise. I made it up while Crawford was protecting me. Want to hear it? Ray smiled. Let's hear it. Emma stood straight, her young voice carrying surprising authority. I promised to be strong but not mean, to protect but not hurt, to stand up but not stand on others, to rise from my ashes every day better than before. The group fell silent, absorbing the simple wisdom of a child who'd seen too much but refused to become bitter. The Phoenix promise, Ray repeated. I think we've found our motto. As they prepared to leave the arena, Ray noticed someone in the shadows, the young man Tyler, who'd called to warn him about Kowalski's plans. Ray approached him carefully. Thank you, Ray said simply. You showed courage calling me. Tyler looked terrified. Kowalski will kill me if he finds out. No, Kowalski said, appearing beside them. I won't. You did the right thing, Tyler. You showed more courage than I did. He turned to Ray. Tyler's my cousin. He's a good kid who got mixed up with my crowd. Could he... Phoenix Way is open to everyone, Ray said. especially those brave enough to do the right thing when it costs them everything. The arena was nearly empty now, just cleaning crews and the last stragglers. Ray stood in the cage one final time, looking at the space where violence had been transformed into teaching, where enemies had become students, where his carefully hidden life had exploded into public purpose. Tank appeared beside him. "You know, there's no going back now, right? The steel ghost is out of the shadows for good." "The ghost is dead," Ray corrected. "What came out tonight was something else, something Sarah would have wanted: a teacher, a protector, a builder of better ways." "So what do we call you now?" Tank asked. Ray thought for a moment, then smiled. "Just Ray. Ray Walker, janitor turned teacher, father, survivor, and apparently the founder of something that's about to get much bigger than any of us expected." They left the arena together, Ray, Emma, and their unlikely family of warriors, twins, masters, and former enemies. The Seattle night was clear for once, stars visible between the buildings. Emma pointed at them excitedly. "Look, Daddy, Phoenix constellation." Ray looked where she pointed, not having the heart to tell her there was no Phoenix constellation. But then again, maybe there should be. Maybe they were creating one star by star, student by student, transformation by transformation. As they walked toward their cars, Ray's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. But this time, instead of threats, it was a photo, a young boy in a wheelchair wearing a homemade Phoenix Way shirt, mimicking the adaptive combat poses he'd seen Crawford demonstrate on the live stream. The caption read, "Thank you for showing my son he can still be strong." Ray showed the photo to Emma, who smiled brightly. "We're helping people, Daddy." "We are," Ray agreed, "one lesson at a time." The parking lot was full of people who'd stayed to talk, to connect, to share their stories. Veterans comparing injuries and adaptations. Parents discussing how to teach their children strength without aggression. Former bullies confronting their past behavior. It was messy and chaotic and beautiful humanity at its most raw and real. Crawford rolled up beside them. "Ray, I need to tell you something. Tonight when those men came for Emma, I didn't think. I just acted. For the first time since my injury, I wasn't disabled. I was able. Able to protect, able to serve, able to matter. You gave me that." "You gave yourself that," Ray corrected. "I just showed you it was possible." "That's what teachers do," Crawford said. "They show us what's possible. And tonight you showed the whole world." As they finally made it to Ray's old truck, Emma climbed into her seat and immediately fell asleep, exhausted from the night's events. Ray stood for a moment looking at his daughter, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. 3 years ago, he'd lost Sarah and thought his life was over. He'd hidden in janitor's uniforms and night shifts trying to disappear. But life, it seemed, had other plans. The very skills he'd tried to bury had become the foundation for something transformative. The violence he'd tried to leave behind had been alchemized into teaching protection service. Sierra and Ava approached one last time. "Ray, we've been talking. We want to fund Phoenix Way nationally, but more than that, we want to document it, create training materials, build an online platform so people anywhere can learn." "The message needs to spread," Ava added. "What happened tonight, it could change how people think about conflict, about strength, about everything." Ray looked at the twins, barely recognizable as the bullies who'd tormented him just days ago. "You've come a long way in a very short time." "We had a good teacher," Sierra said, "and we're just getting started." As Ray drove home through the Seattle streets, Emma sleeping peacefully beside him, he thought about transformation. Not just his own, but everyone's. Kowalski choosing redemption over revenge. The twins choosing service over selfishness. Crawford choosing capability over disability. Even little Emma choosing forgiveness over fear. Iu Fan Sao Edit. The warehouse space that would become Phoenix Way's first official location was a testament to transformation itself. 6 weeks had passed since the arena incident, and the 10,000 square feet of former industrial space had been converted into something unprecedented, part dojo, part community center, part sanctuary for those seeking to rebuild themselves. Ray stood in the center of the main training floor at 5 a.m., the early morning light filtering through windows that had been grimy and broken just weeks before, but now gleamed with purpose. Emma sat on a mat nearby, practicing the meditation breathing Ray had taught her. She'd insisted on coming early, wanting to help prepare for what they both knew would be a pivotal day. Today marked the official opening, but more importantly, it was the day Ray would face his past in a way he'd never expected. The door opened quietly, and Ray didn't need to turn to know who it was. After years of operating in hostile territory, he could identify people by their footsteps, their breathing, their presence. This particular presence carried memories of blood and sand, of missions that succeeded and ones that haunted. "Never thought I'd see the ghost teaching kids how to fall safely," said a gravelly voice that transported Ray instantly back to Kandahar. Ray turned slowly to face Master Sergeant Jim Rodriguez, his former squad leader, the man who'd saved his life more times than either of them could count. Rodriguez looked older, grayer, but still carried himself like a weapon temporarily set to safety. "Jim," Ray said simply, "you came. Got your message. Figured if Ray Walker was finally ready to stop hiding, least I could do was show up." Rodriguez surveyed the space with a tactical eye. "This is what you're doing with your retirement, teaching civilians to play warrior." Emma stood up, her small frame straight with indignation. "My daddy doesn't teach people to play anything. He teaches them to be strong the right way." Rodriguez's weathered face cracked into a smile. "You must be Emma. Your dad talked about you nonstop in his letters. Sarah's girl through and through, fierce and protective." At the mention of her mother, Emma's defensiveness melted slightly. "You knew my mom. Met her once at your dad's medal ceremony. She was the only person I ever saw who could make the steel ghost nervous." Rodriguez turned back to Ray. "She'd be proud of this, you know. What you're building." "I hope so," Ray said quietly. "Jim, why are you really here?" Rodriguez pulled out his phone, showing Ray a news article. "This is why. 17 veteran suicides last week alone. Kids coming back from Syria, Afghanistan, places that don't even make the news. They're broken, Ray, and the system isn't fixing them. But then I see these videos of you teaching that paralyzed kid to fight from a wheelchair, showing those rich girls that strength isn't about domination. Maybe you found something the VA hasn't." "I'm just teaching what we always knew," Ray said, "that warriors aren't defined by their ability to destroy, but by what they choose to protect." The door opened again, admitting the unlikely collection that had become Ray's core team. The twins arrived first, carrying boxes of equipment they'd purchased with their own funds. Behind them came Crawford, walking now, with just a cane, his progress remarkable. Tank followed with a group of veterans, all bearing the invisible wounds that Ray recognized too well. Master Chen and his mother arrived with several students from the original dojo. Even Kowalski was there, having shown up every single day, as promised, his transformation from bully to student genuine and profound. "All right, everyone," Ray called out. "Before we open to the public, we need to talk about what Phoenix Way really is." They gathered in a circle, sitting on the mats in a formation that felt both military and monastic. Emma naturally took her place beside Ray, having earned her position through dedication rather than nepotism. "6 weeks ago," Ray began, "we were strangers, some of us enemies. Now we're about to launch something that could change lives across the country. But I need you all to understand Phoenix Way isn't just about martial arts. It's about resurrection, rising from whatever ashes life has left you in." Sierra raised her hand, a habit from the intensive training she and Ava had undergone. "Ray, there's something we need to tell you. The video from the arena has been viewed over 200 million times globally. We're getting inquiries from military bases, police departments, schools, hospitals. Everyone wants to implement Phoenix Way programs." "That's the problem," Ray said. "This can't be mass-produced. Each person's resurrection is unique. We're not creating a franchise, we're creating a philosophy." "Then how do we spread it?" Crawford asked. "There are thousands of wounded warriors who need this, millions of bullied kids, countless people who've been broken by life." Ray stood moving to a wall where he'd hung a single photograph, his squad in Afghanistan, including 3 men who hadn't made it home. "We spread it the way everything meaningful spreads. One person at a time, each one teaching another. Not scaling up, but growing deep." Rodriguez stood as well, his presence commanding attention. "Ray's right. I've seen what happens when you try to mass-produce warrior training. You get soldiers, not warriors. Fighters, not protectors. The difference matters." "Who are you?" Kowalski asked, recognizing the authority in Rodriguez's bearing. Someone who's seen the ghost in action when it mattered, Rodriguez replied. Someone who knows that what Ray's teaching isn't technique, it's transformation. The morning progressed with intense preparation. They ran through demonstration sequences, prepared welcome materials, set up stations for different types of training. Emma helped everywhere, her small hands arranging water bottles, straightening mats, making sure everything was perfect. At 8 a.m., they opened the doors to find a line of people stretching around the block. There were veterans in wheelchairs, mothers with anxious children, teenagers with the hollow eyes of the perpetually bullied elderly people seeking strength in their twilight years. But at the front of the line stood someone Ray hadn't expected, General Patricia Morrison, now in civilian clothes, accompanied by a young woman Ray didn't recognize. "General," Ray said, surprised. "Just Patricia now, Ray. I retired last month." She gestured to the young woman beside her. "This is my daughter, Ashley. She was assaulted 6 months ago. She's tried everything. Therapy, medication, traditional self-defense. Nothing has helped her feel safe again." Ashley was perhaps 25 with the kind of defensive posture Ray recognized in trauma survivors. She flinched when people moved too quickly, kept her back to walls, monitored exits constantly. "Ma'am," Ray said gently to Ashley, "Phoenix Way isn't about making you feel safe through violence. It's about reclaiming your power through choice. Would you like to join our first class?" Ashley nodded minutely, and Patricia's composed facade cracked slightly with maternal desperation. "Help her, Ray, please." The first class was intentionally small, 20 people each with their own story of breaking and seeking rebuilding. Ray started not with physical techniques, but with philosophy, with breathing, with the simple act of standing with intention rather than fear. "Everyone here has been knocked down," Ray said, addressing the group. "Some physically, some emotionally, some spiritually. Phoenix Way isn't about never falling again. It's about choosing how we rise." He demonstrated basic falls, showing how accepting the fall with grace prevented injury. Crawford assisted, demonstrating adaptive techniques from his wheelchair and then with his cane. The twins worked with the children, their former arrogance replaced with patient encouragement. Even Kowalski, the former bully, knelt beside a trembling teenager sharing his own journey from aggressor to protector. Ashley Morrison stood rigid in the back, watching but not participating. Ray didn't push, didn't single her out. Instead, he let Emma approach her. "Hi," Emma said simply. "I'm Emma. Want to be my partner?" "I don't think I can," Ashley whispered. "That's okay," Emma said. "We can just breathe together. My daddy says breathing is the first victory." Ray watched his daughter lead a general's daughter through basic breathing exercises. Emma's natural empathy, bridging the gap that no amount of adult intervention could have crossed. This was what Phoenix Way was really about. Not him teaching, but creating space for everyone to teach each other. Rodriguez worked with the veterans, his credibility immediate and unquestionable. "The ghost saved my life in Kandahar," he told them. "Not by killing the enemy, but by choosing when not to kill. By showing me that warrior doesn't mean killer, it means protector." One veteran missing his left arm struggled with balance during the exercises. Rodriguez partnered with him, adapting everything in real time. "Your limitation is your advantage," Rodriguez explained. "Enemy expects 2 arms. You've got 1 in surprise. Let me show you." The morning progressed with small victories. The bullied teenager threw his first proper punch not with anger but with control. The elderly woman discovered she could redirect an attacker's force despite her arthritis. Crawford demonstrated a ground defense that had the entire class mesmerized, proof that paralysis didn't mean powerlessness. During a water break, Ray noticed someone watching from the doorway, a man in an expensive suit who looked completely out of place. Ray approached carefully, recognizing the type corporate power used to buying whatever he wanted. "Can I help you?" "Nathan Cross," the man said, extending a manicured hand. "I represent a consortium of investors interested in Phoenix Way. We'd like to buy the concept, turn it into a national chain. We're talking 50 locations in the first year, hundreds within 5. "Not interested," Ray said immediately. "You haven't heard the offer. 20 million upfront royalties on every location, you'd be set for life. Your daughter would never want for anything. Ray felt Emma appear beside him, her hand slipping into his. My daughter already has everything she needs. She has purpose. Cross smirked. Purpose doesn't pay bills. Actually, it does. Sierra interrupted, appearing with a tablet. Phoenix Way is already financially sustainable through donations, grants, and voluntary payments from those who can afford it. We don't need your money. Everything's for sale, Cross insisted. Name your price. It was Kowalski who answered, surprising everyone. 6 weeks ago, I would have agreed with you. Everything had a price, but some things, Mr. Cross, can't be bought. They have to be earned. He stood beside Ray. I tried to destroy this man out of ego and anger. He responded by teaching me to be better. You can't franchise that. You can't mass-produce redemption. Cross looked around at the united front, former enemies standing together, wounded warriors training beside CEOs, children teaching adults about courage. You're all fools. You could be rich. Oh, we already are, Emma said with 8-year-old clarity. We're rich in family. Cross left, shaking his head at their perceived stupidity. But his visit had crystallized something for Ray. Phoenix Way would face pressure to commercialize, to compromise, to become something less than pure. They needed protection, not legal, but philosophical. Gather everyone, Ray told his team. Once the full group was assembled, Ray stood in the center. Phoenix Way needs a code, not rules, but principles. Emma, tell everyone your promise. Emma stood, her voice clear and strong. I promise to be strong but not mean, to protect but not hurt, to stand up but not stand on others, to rise from my ashes every day better than before. That's our foundation, Ray said, but we need more. Each of you has learned something here. Share it. Crawford spoke first. Limitation is just unopened opportunity. The twins said together, strength serves others, not self. Kowalski added, yesterday's enemy can be tomorrow's teacher. Rodriguez contributed, warriors plant trees they'll never sit under. One by one, each person added a principle, creating a living philosophy that belonged to all of them. Master Chen's mother, Kumiko, wrote each one in beautiful calligraphy, creating a scroll that would hang in every Phoenix Way location. The afternoon brought unexpected challenges. A group of MMA fighters arrived not to challenge, but to learn. Word had spread through the fighting community that something different was happening here, something that gave their skills meaning beyond competition. We're tired of hurting people for entertainment, their leader explained. We want our abilities to matter. Ray paired them with the veterans, creating an exchange combat experience for athletic skill wisdom, for strength, purpose for power. The synthesis was remarkable, each group teaching the other. Ashley Morrison finally participated, partnering with Emma for basic defensive positions. When a loud noise made her flinch, Emma simply held her hand. It's okay to be scared, Emma said. Daddy says courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Your daughter is remarkable, Patricia told Ray, watching the interaction. She's had to be, Ray replied. But every child is remarkable when given the chance to rise. The day wore on with continuous classes, each one building on the last. The space filled with the sound of controlled movement, encouraging words, small victories celebrated like major achievements. This wasn't a traditional dojo with its hierarchies and belt systems. This was something new, a community of resurrection. As evening approached, an unexpected group arrived, the families of Ray's fallen squad members. He hadn't seen them since the memorial services had avoided them out of guilt for surviving when their loved ones hadn't. Maria Sanchez, whose husband Tony had died saving Ray's life, approached first. We heard what you're doing. Tony would be so proud. Ray's composure cracked. Maria, I'm so sorry. If I had been faster. Stop, she said firmly. Tony made his choice. He chose to protect his brother. Now you're protecting others. That's how we honor him, not by dying with him, but by living for him. The other families echoed her sentiment. They'd brought photographs of the fallen to add to Ray's wall, not a memorial to the dead, but a reminder of why the living must continue to serve. Rodriguez pulled Ray aside. You've done something I didn't think was possible. You've turned your trauma into teaching, your guilt into guidance. The ghost is truly dead. What you are now is something better. What's that? Hope, Rodriguez said simply. For every broken warrior, every bullied kid, every person who thinks they can't rise again, you're proof that they can. The day's final class was special, a combination of everyone who'd trained that day, nearly 100 people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. Ray stood before them, Emma at his side, his unlikely family of teachers surrounding him. "Phoenix Way isn't mine," he said. "It belongs to all of us. Every person who chooses to rise, who refuses to let their breaking be their ending, who transforms their pain into purpose, you are Phoenix Way." He began leading them through a synchronized form adapted so everyone could participate. The wheelchair-bound veterans rolled in pattern with the walking students. Children moved in harmony with grandparents. Former enemies breathed in unison. Watching from the doorway, Jennifer Martinez and her camera crew captured the moment. She'd been documenting Phoenix Way's development, creating a record not for sensationalism, but for inspiration. "This is unprecedented," she whispered to her cameraman. "It's not just martial arts, it's a movement." As the class ended, people didn't immediately leave. They lingered talking, sharing stories, making connections. The teenager who'd been bullied was exchanging phone numbers with Crawford, planning to train together. Ashley Morrison was signing up for daily classes, her mother watching with tears of relief. Sierra approached Ray with a proposal. "We've been contacted by the Department of Defense. They want to implement Phoenix Way at Walter Reed, working with wounded warriors." General Morrison pulled strings before she retired. "We'd need more instructors," Ray said. "Already handled," Tank interjected. "I've got 30 veterans ready to train as teachers. Rodriguez has another 20. Crawford's been developing an entire adaptive combat curriculum." Ray looked around at what they'd built in just 6 weeks. From a viral video of a janitor defending his dignity to a philosophy that could transform lives nationwide. But more than that, from a broken widower hiding from the world to a teacher surrounded by family he'd never expected. Emma tugged on his shirt. "Daddy, look." She pointed to the wall where the photographs hung his fallen brother's Sarah's picture, newly added images of every person who'd found resurrection at Phoenix Way. But Emma wasn't pointing at the pictures. She was pointing at the shadows they cast in the setting sun, shadows that looked remarkably like wings. "Phoenix wings," she said softly. "We all have them. We just have to choose to spread them." Kowalski approached his transformation complete. "Ray, I need to tell you something. The men who tried to grab Emma at the arena, they were my cousins, acting on my anger. I've convinced them to turn themselves in to take responsibility." "That took courage," Ray said. "You taught me that courage isn't about being tough," Kowalski replied. "It's about being honest, especially when honesty costs everything." As the sun set on Phoenix Way's first official day, Ray stood in the center of the empty training floor, Emma asleep in his arms, exhausted from helping everyone she could reach. The space that had been a warehouse was now something sacred, a place where the broken came to rebuild, where enemies became allies, where strength was redefined daily. Rodriguez stood beside him. "You know, this is just the beginning, right? What you've started here, it's going to spread, whether you franchise it or not. People will carry it with them, teach it to others, adapt it to their needs." "That's the point," Ray said. "Phoenix Way isn't a business or even a school. It's an idea that everyone deserves resurrection, that strength should protect rather than dominate, that our breaks don't define us, but our rising does." "Sarah would be so proud," Rodriguez said softly. Ray looked at his daughter's sleeping face, so much like her mother's. "She saw this before I did. She knew I was meant to teach to build rather than break. It just took me getting broken myself to understand." The twins approached with news. "Ray, the video from today has already gone viral. #Phoenix Rising is trending worldwide. We're getting messages from people in 40 countries wanting to start Phoenix Way programs." "Then we teach teachers," Ray decided. "Not mass production, but careful cultivation. Each teacher must embody the philosophy, not just the techniques." Master Chen and his mother joined them. "My contacts in Japan want to send students here," Chen said. "They see Phoenix Way as the evolution of traditional martial arts, keeping the wisdom while adapting to modern needs." Kumiko added, "The old ways were about victory through superior force. Your way is about victory through superior wisdom. This is what the world needs now." As everyone finally departed, Ray remained with Emma, standing in their creation. The janitor who'd mopped these floors in shame now stood as a teacher, a leader, a symbol of resurrection. But more importantly, he stood as a father who'd shown his daughter that strength wasn't about never falling, it was about how you chose to rise. Emma stirred in his arms. Daddy. Yeah, baby girl. Are we heroes now? Ray considered the question. No, sweetheart. Heroes are perfect, untouchable above everyone else. We're something better. What's that? We're human. Broken and rebuilt, fallen and risen. We're proof that anyone can transform, that everyone deserves redemption, that strength isn't about being unbeatable, it's about being unbreakable in spirit, even when your body or heart breaks. Emma smiled sleepily. I like that better than heroes. As they prepared to leave, Ray took one last look around Phoenix Way. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to teach and learn. The movement would grow, spread, evolve. There would be resistance from those who profited from the old definitions of strength. There would be failures, setbacks, moments of doubt. But there would also be transformations. Veterans finding purpose beyond war. Children learning to stand tall without standing on others. Bullies becoming protectors. Victims becoming victors. Each person who walked through these doors would carry the possibility of resurrection. Ray's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He expected another threat, another challenge. Instead, it was a photo from Afghanistan children playing in a schoolyard he'd helped protect with a message in broken English. We remember the ghost who protected us. We teach our children his way strength that protects, never destroys. He showed the message to Emma, who was now fully awake. You saved those kids. We saved them, Ray corrected. My squad, the interpreters, everyone who chose protection over destruction. That's what warriors do. They make the world safer for those who can't protect themselves. And now you're teaching others to be warriors. I'm teaching them to be something better than warriors, Ray said. I'm teaching them to be protectors, healers, builders. Warriors are sometimes necessary, but protectors are always needed. They walked out into the Seattle night, the city lights twinkling like ground-level stars. Behind them, Phoenix Way stood ready for tomorrow's resurrections. The building itself had been transformed from a place of industry to a place of renewal, its very walls infused with the stories of those who'd already begun their rising. Daddy, Emma said as they reached their truck, I want to teach too, not fighting, but the breathing, the falling, the rising, the things that help people feel safe. You already are teaching, Ray told her. Every time you show kindness to someone who's struggling, every time you demonstrate courage despite fear, every time you choose forgiveness over anger, you're teaching the most important parts of Phoenix Way. As they drove home through the Seattle streets, Ray reflected on the journey. From the moment the Hale twins had mocked him in the dojo to this night, when those same twins were helping build something transformative, it had been just over 6 weeks. 6 weeks to go from hidden to exposed, from janitor to teacher, from alone to surrounded by chosen family. But really, the journey had been 3 years in the making from the moment Sarah died, and he'd chosen to hide rather than heal. Phoenix Way wasn't just teaching others to rise from ashes, it was his own resurrection, his own choice to transform grief into growth, loss into leadership, breaking into building. The apartment building looked the same from the outside, but Ray knew everything had changed. They were no longer hiding here, surviving here. They were living here temporarily, while building something that would outlast them both. Tomorrow's going to be even bigger, isn't it? Emma asked as they climbed the stairs. Probably, Ray admitted. Are you ready for that? Emma considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I think so. As long as we're together, as long as we remember Mom, as long as we keep helping people, I'm ready for anything. Ray unlocked their door, entering the small apartment that had been their refuge and was now just their launching pad. On the refrigerator, Emma had taped a photo from today, the entire Phoenix Way family standing together. Former enemies, arm in arm, wounded warriors standing tall, children and elders united in purpose. Below it, she'd written in her careful handwriting, Day 1 of Forever. Ray smiled at his daughter's optimism, but also recognized its truth. Phoenix Way wasn't a temporary program or a trending movement. It was a philosophy that would outlive them all, spreading from person to person, adapting to each need while maintaining its core truth, that strength should protect, not destroy, that everyone deserves resurrection, that our breaks are just opportunities to rebuild stronger. As he tucked Emma into bed for the second time that night, she asked one final question. Daddy, do you think Mom sent all these people to us? The twins Crawford. Everyone. Ray kissed her forehead. I think Mom would say we sent ourselves to each other, that when people are ready to rise, they find their phoenixes. Are you my phoenix, Daddy? No, baby girl, you're mine. You're the reason I rose. You're the fire that brought me back to life. Emma smiled, settling into sleep. Then we're each other's phoenixes. That's even better. Ray sat beside her bed until she fell asleep, then returned to the living room where he found an envelope that had been slipped under the door. Inside was a check for $1 million and a note, "From those whose children you saved in Kandahar. We've been watching, waiting for the ghost to become what he was meant to be. This is our investment in Phoenix Way. Teach the world what you taught us, that protection is the highest form of strength. The grateful parents." Ray stared at the check. Understanding that Phoenix Way had already grown beyond his control, beyond his comprehension. It belonged to everyone who'd been broken and chose to rise, everyone who'd been weak and chose to become strong the right way, everyone who understood that true power came from lifting others up, not knocking them down. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to spread the Phoenix philosophy. The warehouse would fill again with seekers and students with the broken seeking rebuilding. And Ray would be there not as the steel ghost or even as a hero, but as something more important, a teacher, a father, a man who'd learned that the greatest strength was admitting your weakness and choosing to rise anyway. The night settled over Seattle, and in a small apartment in a rundown building, a father and daughter slept peacefully, surrounded by the invisible wings of all the phoenixes they'd helped rise. Tomorrow there would be more, and the day after that even more. The resurrection had begun, and there was no stopping it now.